Welcome to Rogue Bogues, episode 16 of the Basketball Podcast. Welcome once again. Good to be joined by Mr. Pro. How's it going?
Well, it would have been fucking better, Bogues. Last week you didn't say a dog was chirping behind me, and it was actually my son. So I had the ASPCA trying to fucking take my dogs away from me, and then I had child services come to my house because they think I was treating my kid like a fucking dog. I appreciate that. So thanks to you. Kudos.
Oh man, I apologize. It's the I'm going to blame the bad audio that we got. You know, just muffled sound. That's my excuse. But I can say if it was your son that sounded like a dog, he's already speaking better English than you do.
I mean, look at my genes that I got. I mean, you can't get more fucking defective genes than I have. I wouldn't doubt it. I thought he would sound like a hippo, to be honest with you, but I'll take a dog any day of the week.
Well, we had another busy week. We have a great interview coming up, by the way, which we'll keep under wraps right now, but stay tuned for some information on that. But just as we were about to do the podcast, some news broke. The Minnesota Timberwolves look like they're about to sell former major leaguer Alex Rodriguez and billionaire Mark Law, who has been involved in numerous different companies, started his own companies and whatnot, so got a bit of coin to him. But the rumor goes that he'll be buying the team from Glenn Taylor, who hasn't had a whole lot of success there. There's been some turmoil there. The fans aren't too happy with how the organization's running. Anyhow, it looks like it'll be 2 years until they take over. The deal's still being negotiated. 2023, it's looking like. Valuation for the sale is rumored to be around $1.5 billion to purchase today. This is a club that was valued at $265 million in 2010 and then valued at $1.4 billion in start of this year. So, but it's basically a 428% jump in valuation despite only making the playoffs once in the last 15 years. How do you see all that, Pro?
Bogues, it's pretty incredible. You know, these sales are tough, you know, with these teams. You always hear about things and then things fall through. But I know a couple of people tried to buy the team, but $1.5 billion is just going to drive up prices for these other teams. I wouldn't think that they were worth that much. You know, I think it's a little bit overvalued for what they were really worth. I haven't checked the numbers on it, but it goes to show you just hold on to these teams and then they're just going to appreciate in value. It's pretty impressive. Do you think they're going to keep the team there, or you think if they do sell?
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Let's crystal ball it. I mean, there's rumors that, you know, I saw some memes this was broken by Woj as well, so let's credit Woj with that. But under his tweet, there were already photoshops of Ed Woods and Towns in a Seattle Supersonics uniform. So there's smoke already that they're going to move the team, and both these guys. I don't think Mark Law does, pretty positive, but most of these guys have no ties to Minnesota as a city or a state. So, you know, maybe the writing is on the wall that eventually they'll look to move that team.
Yeah, and you know the NBA, they're begging to have a team in Seattle, especially with, you know, how that went down, how the team went to Oklahoma City. I listened to a podcast about it, about how that sale went down, and you know, they got a little bit of sore spot about it, and the league wants to get back there. And, you know, it's and A-Rod having a lot of, you know, sort of clout in Seattle and sort of played for the Seattle Mariners for a long time. Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting how they do things there. But $1.5 billion, that's incredible. But they do own their own building. So when the Clippers sold for $2 billion and they didn't own their building at the time, you know, they do own that Target Center that's downtown. So I would assume that that's part of the sale as well. So 1.5 though, man, those team prices.
Owning the Target Center is like owning a shed, and that's your principal place of residence. You know, like it's an arena.
You mean it's like me invested in Barkley for a week?
Yeah, it's not the best arena, and that would be my other thing. Now that these two fellows have taken, you know, are going to take over majority ownership of the Minnesota Timberwolves, the question is if we don't start hearing about, you know, some rumblings about a new arena in the next year or two, I strongly believe that they will move because they need a new arena. The arena's one of the oldest in the league now.
Bogues, they put big money into redoing it. It actually looks really nice. Like, as far as like they redid the seats, they redid the they put it was like a 2-year project. It was after you left. They've done about 2 years of remodeling on the thing. And the last time I was there about a year ago. It looks really nice, but it'll be interesting what they do with that. A lot of owners, they come in, they got big ideas as far as like, you know, doing different things, and it'll be interesting to see what happens if and when they take the team over.
But yeah, like you said, obviously then you're paying $1.5 billion. All right, they have their own arena. I mean, what does this mean for the Lakers and the Golden State Warriors and these kind of teams, New York Knicks? I mean, they're starting to, people rumored $4 or $5 billion, but shit, you look at these numbers, I think it's even north of that.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, so I'm going to give Stan Van Gundy some credit, which doesn't happen very often.
Oh, wow.
I'm not a huge fan of his coaching and just how he goes about it, but he did something unique, or not unique, but something that's not done very often. Lonzo Ball was out with a sore hip. The Pelicans decided to fully lean into point guard Zion. So instead of having him initiate the offense following free throws and just dead balls, which they do a lot, he basically took over the ball handling duties for the whole game. It proved to be very, very efficient. 37 points, 15 rebounds, 8 assists masterpiece against one of the league's elite defensive teams. And look, I think it's something that I think they can do. I really do. I mean, I don't see what teams can do to kind of stymie it. As we know, teams will try to at least bait him into shooting some threes and play off him and do all that fun stuff. But as we know, if you all of a sudden put him at the point guard position, it's very hard to do that because he can be a great handoff guy. He can hand off, set hard screens. He can get downhill with the floor spread with 4 shooters around him. So, I mean, I don't know if you saw that game. I saw a little bit of the highlights, but it was a great effort, and I thought it was a really good adjustment by Stan. Yeah,
I mean, I've been very critical of his skill level coming into the season. And I'll tell you what, their development of him with his shooting and his ball handling, I mean, he's done a great job developing that and getting to a higher level. Now, he changes speeds really well. He's a really good finisher. Even when he doesn't dunk it, he can get in there and finish. The only thing I would probably do if they're going to go long term with this is probably pick him up full and force him to turn and turn and turn. If you double him on pick and rolls, he's just going to hit that short roller. So it's not, I mean, he's got pretty good basketball IQ with that. So, I think that would be tough just to double him all the time. I think he'll sort of, he might struggle with that for a little bit, but he'll catch on. He's a tough kid. It was pretty interesting, man. I mean, just seeing him attack the basket and, it was like, he didn't get stripped. He's like, the fucking guy's like Bo Jackson. I mean, he's like, you can't really like put him in any position. You can't really define his game, but he just puts his head down and he's so hard to stop and he's such an elite level athlete. He's an interesting watch, man. I think Carlisle compared him to Shaquille O'Neal with ball handling skills or something like that a week or two ago or 3 weeks ago when they played. But it's hard to sort of pinpoint who he is and what he does, but he just, man, he dominates. I mean, 26, 7, and 3, shooting 70% from the line this year, 36 from the 3. He's, my hat's off to the kid.
Yeah, and you hit on the head with what I was going to say is the teams, and if they go to this full time, do you then put a Rajon Rondo and Avery Bradley pitbull that picks him up full court and just tries to turn him and make life hell for him? But then he does get that ball over half court, then all of a sudden Rajon shitting himself trying to get a switch to not get taken down to the low post. So it will be interesting to see if they do that because that would be a go-to, but I'm just not sure how that would work for long stretches.
Yeah, they'd probably shift it in and out. They'll probably just use it as something extra they could do, give Ball a little bit of a break or just sort of switch things up. But I mean, it's a great issue to have. It's a great resource to have. And like I said, he accelerates. He's like a locomotive, like just full steam ahead. When he changes speeds like that and gets into the paint area, you just can't stop the kid.
Yeah, and his body's so wide as it is. He's got quickness and then he's got strength on top of that. So even if you wanted to take a charge, first off, you got to try to get the middle of his body, which is wider than most guys, to get in good legal position to take a charge. Then he's got the speed. He's starting to get downhill quick. He can kind of half euro now. Like it's a tough ask. And like you said, you can't really define his position. At one point we were both advocating to play him at the 5, but I think you can do essentially a 0.5 in phases. You all of a sudden put some shooters around him, get Adams out of that lineup. It's like, holy shit. Like, what do you're essentially Giannis, like with what they did in Milwaukee last season when they had all those shooters around him and still kind of do it this season, but where he's just attacking the middle of the floor and then you got to pick your poison on, okay, are we just going to hedge in and leave the shooters and hope they miss,
You try to put a fucking charge on him, you might as well have sell gravestones in the fucking arena because, 285, it's sort of like, you try to take a charge on him, it's like what a pizza looks like when I fucking try to attack it. It's RIP, brother.
Yeah, good point. Good point. But we'll watch that one closely. I hope they continue with it. It helps. I think it helps Adams as well. You can stick him down in that dunker spot now, and I think playing Zion and Adams together on the block and elbows isn't a good philosophy moving forward, because it just there's no room in the paint, there's no floor spacing. But now you figured out a way. Let's run things strictly through Zion as point guard duties, and with the way Lonzo Ball's shooting the ball now from three, it's it doesn't leave Lonzo out to dry either. He can still play valuable minutes for him. So it'd be interesting to watch.
And Bogues, he's 70 from the line and 36 from three. Not that he takes a lot of threes. He only attempts about a 0.5 per game. But forget about the three, but the free throw, last year wasn't like that. So he's not a liability on he used to be dominating on in the paint, doing, driving it, what have you, posting up. But he was a liability, big space on the floor and free throw shooting, especially down the clutch. Now he's at 70. He's much better. Now he's not as much of a liability in those situations anymore. And he's impressive. He impresses me for sure.
We'll keep watching that one. I've got a gripe, or just I need to pick your brain. What the LA Clippers, man? What are they missing? What is going on? Look, I've seen a fair few of their games. A lot of their games are on ESPN here because they're a marquee team. They've had some lineup changes along the way. They've had some injuries, obviously. They're still resting guys a lot in different games between Kawhi and Paul George. And I think this was a huge issue for them last season. They just couldn't get any continuity of playing together and familiarity with each other. And I think that's a big part of, especially teams that are fresh, and they were a fresh team last season. One game they look like they're going to win a championship, and then you go to the next game and they lose to a horrible Orlando team when they're up double digits. So, what is going on? I think they've been better. My guy, if it's a Zubats, moving him into the starting lineup, I think has helped him a little bit. It just provides a big body that doesn't need the ball. He'll hit people, he'll block shots. Not a 40-minute guy, but I think they played a little bit better with that movement of him in the starting lineup. But shit, why isn't it clicking? It just looks so clunky to me. And the elephant in the room is time is of the essence. They can't, just turn this on in the playoffs, because they haven't turned it on yet in the last 18 months.
I think the more we sort of look at these things through a lens, it's I think the regular season guys just sort of turn it on and turn it off, and for some they just don't give a fuck. And it's not a bad it's not a great thing, don't get me wrong. It's not like they're quitters or anything. They compete and they play, and they rested and they do this. But I just think that these guys try to, not just the Clippers but most teams try to gear this up towards the playoffs, and try to turn it on. And look, they take a lot of tough shots offensively. They isolate a lot. There's not a lot of movement out of their offense. There's not a lot of cutting going on. Defensively, they're not as good as they were. Their bench isn't as good as they were. Remember, they lost Montrezl Harrell to free agency. Their depth chart off the bench. Lou Williams didn't really play well before he got traded. You bring Rondo in, and I think Rondo sort of gives him a different look because it gets the ball out of George and Kawhi's hands all the time. And he allows themselves to sort of put those guys in better situations. But it's not just going to be Rondo helping them win a championship. They're going to have to turn it on. And those guys just they're not wired like that, where they're just turning it on all the time. And you just see it more and more in the NBA, where the regular season doesn't really matter as much. It matters for the big games and a lot of the big teams. But especially if you're playing a team that you're supposed to dominate, like an Orlando Magic, you just fuck it. We're just, you expect them. I've seen this close up, where you expect a team and I'm sure you have 1,000 times, where you expect a team just to roll over, and some teams just don't roll over. And if you have the mentality of we're just better than you and we're gonna win, that shit ain't gonna work. I just think the regular season is diminished, the value of the regular season, unless it's a must-win game, a big-time TV game, or a hyped game, or playoff implications. But what do you think on that, Bogues?
Yeah, I would disagree somewhat with what you're saying, that they're trying to disagree with what you say they're doing, about ramping it up for the playoffs. They did that last season. My whole thing was, I picked the Clippers to be much better this year based on their last season. Depth chart, bench aside, I thought, shit, they got a wake-up call, because resting Kawhi one game, Paul George the next game, we're just going to coast through the regular season, albeit it was in the bubble in Orlando, and then we're just going to roll in the playoffs, win a championship. That bit him in the ass. like big time, right? So I thought, shit, these guys are going to be like, okay, we can't do that again. We need to get some continuity. We need to play together. We need to get more minutes together. They haven't done it yet. And they still understand the side of load management and all that. But at the end of the day, they need to play more minutes together. They need to have big fuck ups at times, make mistakes, learn from those mistakes, have a little locker room quabble, whatever it is. They need to do all that in the regular season, so it doesn't rear its ugly head again in the middle of a playoff series. And that's exactly what we saw last season. So I'm just scratching my head at what's going on. It's just, to me, it looks so clunky. Nothing's flowing. If I look at the Clippers and I'm scouting them, okay, yeah, they go ISO. That's all I know about them. I don't know I don't think they even know. What's your MO? What do we need to do to beat the Clippers? It changes game to game. And that's why sometimes they look like a championship team and they'll beat the best team in the league, and then the next night they'll lose to the worst team in the league because I don't think they know. It's just all over the place. Yeah, Paul George and Kawhi, we're going to ISO you guys a lot, but beyond that, what are we doing? Who are we? What's our culture and identity? Are we a knuckle down, let's get 4 straight stops team? Are we a beat them on the board like we did last season with Harrell, second unit? We're getting on the rim with Harrell and Lewis getting to the free throw line. I don't know where all that is with the Clippers.
Yeah, and I heard Ibaka. There's something going on with Ibaka too, not being now again, this could be false information, but something about they were going to demote him anyway, or his minutes or what have you. I don't know if they were going to promote Zubac, and then I don't know if something happened or what have you. There's a little bit of a quarrel with that, but now he's out for a while. So I don't know, but I like Zubac. I like Zubac in the lineup. I like Ibaka better coming off the bench to give you more scoring. And Zubac gives you more energy. He's not as good as a shot blocker, but he's more of an inside threat as far as roller, more active rebounding. And I think having Ibaka to get you some more points off the bench would be good, but yeah, they're just not putting it together consistently. But then again, Bogues, who the fuck is? You name me a team that consistently is kicking out. I know, look, obviously Brooklyn's been playing well, but
Utah.
Utah's been playing well, but most of the teams, they win by 30, lose by 15, win by 20. It's just, I don't know what it is. I don't know what you blame it on. And players today, the competitiveness like that, getting pissed, I just don't think that I don't think that just sticks the knife in them as much. And really, they expect it just all right, and the playoffs will be different. Well, how the fuck is it going to be different? How are you approaching it different? You got to change your world up a little bit. So I don't know. I have no idea what. Some
teams can do that, though. We saw it with the Golden State Warriors with the Durant run, where after the first season of Durant, that second season, they coasted through. They were kind of just sleepwalking through the regular season, and then they could switch it on. They got 3 guys that could potentially lead the league in scoring if they were all on different teams. Yeah. So they could do that. The Clippers haven't proven they can do that yet. So until you prove you can do it, it was like the old Warriors that won the first championship. We had to take every game of a regular season as serious as can be. Even the Summer League we took serious that year and the year before because we wanted to really make a stamp. Once you've done that, okay, you win a championship, Clippers, you can do what you're doing now. But I don't think you can do that without getting a championship. And like I said, my whole thought process was anyone within that organization, anyone outside of it with half a brain would think, shit, this is a bit in the arse. They're gonna change it a little bit, but they haven't. So, I mean, hopefully I'm proven wrong and they make a finals, but I don't see it right now. It is all over the place with all teams in the league. I think COVID hasn't helped that. Guys kind of not being settled, all the testing they got to do. I don't know what they're at now, but at one point it was 2 or 3 tests a day, all that kind of bullshit that to deal with. It is taxing, mental fatigue, physical fatigue, so I understand that, but there's only a handful of teams that are consistent with their brand and what they do every night, and maybe Utah are overblown because of it. Maybe Utah, because they have such a strong culture, everyone's roles are addressed, everyone knows what they're doing. Maybe that's why they're doing so well, because they're one of the few teams that's actually sticking to their MO. Yeah,
the only thing that they got right now going for them is they're only a game and a half away from Phoenix, the head of their division, and the Lakers are just plummeting games, and they're probably going to fall down. Now, the team that I'd worry about, is Dallas coming up. But for the Clippers, they got to figure some things out here. It's not like they're in third right now, and them in Denver, they're a game apart, so it's pretty close. But they got to turn some things on and say, you know what, we're sick of this shit. Like, we got to be consistent. Championship teams, it's different. Like, I talked to Kevin McHale about the 80s Celtics teams, and he goes, look, we were so good, we would get bored a lot. Like the Golden State Warriors, like you were talking about. They were so good. You guys were so good, you get bored sometimes. And then, like, you might have a slow start for 2.5 quarters. And then you're like, all right, fuck it, let's go. And then put it away. Like, those great teams are like that. But the Clippers aren't a great team by any stretch of the imagination. You know, they need to, like, get some consistency every night and say, fuck it. Like, this is what we're going to do tonight. And then we're going to do this for the rest of the season. This is what type of team we're going to be. And then we gotta fucking buckle down. We gotta buckle down defensively. We gotta take better shots. We gotta move the ball, and we gotta fucking, turn it up and step on the gas pedal with these teams. They got two dominating players, obviously. They got two really good players, and now they just got a hodgepodge of the rest of the guys. I like Morris. Like, Morris gives you toughness, and like, he's edgy. He's probably the closest thing to an 80s, 90s player they got on their team.
Yeah.
Beverly's gonna be out for a while now. So it'll be interesting to see. I think Rondo is going to help them. Like, Rondo helped the Lakers last year, taking the ball out of LeBron's hands at points of the game to sort of navigate where the ball is not just so ball dominant and doesn't stop. So I think that would help a little bit, but it's just not Rondo or one player. It's got to be more of a collective. It's like, you know what? Enough of this shit. We got to do something here, because Utah's a motherfucker, especially if they let fans in that building.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't fear Phoenix all that much. I do, but I don't. Utah's a motherfucker. Utah's a motherfucker. They got guys who are they got a really good team, and they got a good coach, and they got a hostile fucking environment to play in. So it'll be interesting.
Lost one game at home, I think, the whole year, right?
Yeah.
And that was just recently against Phoenix, I think, at home. Yeah, I think they've lost one game, and that's with 20% capacity I think they've got right now. So they sell that place out, or get to half capacity by next month or the month after. I mean, they have a good run, but we'll continue to watch how those Clippers go. Did you see Charles Barkley's comments about the Clippers, by the way?
No. What did Charles say?
Oh, he said something along the lines of, I've been fat. I've been, in the dumps. I've had blah, blah, blah. I've had this. I've had that. I've played bad. I've played good. And the one thing in common with all that was the Clippers always sucked. so it was a fair point. They've never gotten over the hump. They've had a couple of good seasons. And obviously the Lob City was supposed to be their era. That didn't work out well. Besides highlights, they didn't really do much. So it would be nice to see them be up there, but they've got a lot of work to do. Moving on, let's talk about the brutality of the NBA. So Demarcus Cousins, I found this interesting reading it on Hoops Hype. Let me read this out. He was most recently forced to sign a 10-day contract with the Los Angeles Clippers. Oh, there's our answer, actually, Pro. Cousins has gone to the Clippers, so that could work well. But Cousins, an all-star just 3 seasons ago, and an all-NBA second teamer 5 seasons ago, can't even get a contract right now without having to prove his worth first. That insanely fast turnaround for Cousins is actually historic, as it makes the 30-year-old big man the fastest player to go from an NBA All-Star to signing a 10-day contract in NBA history. That's quite the fall, and I guess it you feel a little bit for Demarcus. I mean, whether you love him, hate him, whatever, how he acts, that's a whole separate conversation. He's had some horrendous injuries the last couple of seasons. One I was there for, where he blew his quad up, and then the Achilles and all that kind of stuff. So that's been harsh. That's part of what you have to deal with. But I mean, it just shows the brutality of the league. You can be, within a 3-year period, you can be an arguable top 10 player, which he was. He was putting up insane stats for New Orleans, even at Sacramento, to now basically having to have to try out just for a roster spot. Pretty crazy, right?
Yeah, this is where, as NBA players, you got to get ready for everything. And I talked about it before, earlier podcasts about the 5 stages every player has. And, it's who's Demarcus Cousins, keep an eye on Demarcus Cousins, get me Demarcus Cousins, get me a Demarcus Cousins type, and who's Demarcus Cousins. There are very few players that are unforgettable in this league. And as much as people want to hype up every player, that it just goes like that. Now, there's a few things that went against him. I don't care about how big of an asshole you can be, or a supposed bad guy that you want to be. Teams are going to sign you, as long as it doesn't go too extreme. But the 2 injuries, the Achilles, the knee in the workout in the summer, that hurt him. The devaluing of the post up and the post up player, the big man, it didn't help him, and just bad timing. And this is why NBA players have to get ready for everything. And I tell players, and you can't be too high, you can't be too low. You gotta stay grounded with this stuff, because they celebrate you, and you've been around it. I've been around coaches that celebrated players because they were really good. And then once they lost a step, those coaches didn't want to work with that player anymore. People stopped sort of treating them like the god that they were. And it's an ugly part of the league that's why you got to continue to stay prepared. You got to stay invested in it. You got to stay in great shape. You got to always work on your skill level because you never know when it's going to be floored against you. It's unfortunate, but that's just how it is in the league. And to be honest with you, Bogues, nobody gives a fuck. If they chew you out and spit you out, Bogues, nobody gives a fuck. For that beat writer that's been, loving you for 10 years, they'll love somebody else. For the, for the organization, for the coaches, they'll love somebody else. Your agent loves somebody else. That's the way it goes. And it's an ugly, brutal part of the business that nobody wants to talk about. You're going to get old. Players are going to get old. Players are going to get, injured. They're going to get in trouble. They're going to get, recruited over. And that's adversity. And everybody wants to tweet out about how they deal with adversity. And people are sensitive and they don't want to admit they're sensitive. But that shit fucking turns on you quick in this league. And it's just, every player has to go through it at some point. You would have thought for him, he would have went through it when he's 37 and not 30. But that's just the league. That's what you got to face. But you've seen it with other people. They treat you different.
I mean, I haven't just seen it. I went through the same shit. Like there's no one that can put a plan together or tell you how to handle it when you're in that moment. And not many athletes handle it the right way because it's hard. It's a harsh reality. So no one's preparing you for it. It just happens one day. And for me, it was in Dallas. It was like we're on a team that was shitty. I was starting with Dirk. So he had two slow fucking plodding, 30-something-year-olds in the starting lineup. And Rick came to me and said, we're going to play you off the bench. So I hadn't come off the bench in my career. And it was like, holy fuck. Like it was shocking, and not only that, it was on a team that sucked. So I was like, what the hell, man? I agree with that. It's a harsh reality. But after being pissed for a week or two and not being happy about it and getting in my feelings and maybe pouting a little bit, I'll be the first to admit that. I then realized my career's winding down, man. Like I'm slowing down. I'm not playing as well as I once did. I can't have the impact I once did. Thankfully, I came back and signed in Australia and revamped my career a little bit in my early 30s and then went over to Golden State and actually contributed positively for them off the bench. But man, it's a thing that no one can prepare you for.
Bogues, how the fuck didn't you know things were going bad for you in Dallas? They had me work you out every day. They had me work. I mean, come on. That's like literally it was like the Goodyear blimp coming out and saying, Bogues, you're fucked. That's what it was basically saying. But players sometimes 99% of the time, they don't handle it well because they don't understand it. They dominate at every level. They dominated in the league. They dominated in college, high school, whatever, and they dominated in the NBA for a while. And then they get scaled back. Not that this is the same thing, but that's why Juwan Howard lasted until he was 2 years past where he should have left the league because people want him around because he sort of downshifted and understood it and said, fuck it. I'm just going to play the way they need me to play. I can't play the way I played when I was 26 anymore. Adonis Haslam. I don't think Adonis Haslam has played a fucking game in 7 years.
No.
But they keep having him around. Why? Because he said, you know what? I get it. I'm over myself. I want to win. I want to make my 2.7. I could run for fucking mayor in Miami. And
he's a locker room coach.
Pat Riley's going to take.
He's a locker room coach. There's a value in that.
No doubt. And it's just tough. It's a tough thing to do. And hopefully Demarcus could sort of get a little. Here's what he should do. He should, if I was advising, I'd just say, look, just get ready for these games. Hopefully there'll be some blowouts. There'll be some back-to-backs. So you get some minutes in. They're probably getting them just in case they got to play like Jokic in the playoffs and they need an extra body to bang some guys around. But put up some consistent minutes where some team might give them 2 years, 10 million, 1 year guaranteed. And then he goes to a bad team and puts up numbers and maybe get some rhythm going. But look, he's got no choice. And that's the problem with some of these players. They act like they have a fucking choice and they're doing the team a favor by being there. No. You got picked up. That's not the way. You got to retool the way you think.
If that alarm hasn't rang yet on a 10-day, you're in some trouble.
He's not that bad of a kid. And, I know he's had some trouble before. I've dealt with kids like this my whole career. I love misfits like this. You just gotta communicate with them, look them in the eye and say, look, this is what we need from you. And we're going to fucking help you the best we can. But the second you go left, when we tell you to go right, you're fucking gone. but we're going to help you. You're going to help us, but you got to do this every day. I don't want to fucking hear any stories. Don't get it twisted of why you're here. This is why you're here. And you need to get with the program. He's been pretty good, I've heard, in the last couple of places he was at. He didn't have a lot of trouble from what I've heard. Now, this could be wrong. It might not be. I've been around the kid. But like guys like that, teams fuck it up mostly because they're afraid of a guy like that. They don't want to talk to him. They do things without telling him. I think with NBA players, mostly if you communicate, look them in the eye, even if you're fucking them, even if you're like, they're not going to be happy with what you're saying. At least you're telling them, and you're not doing some sneaky shit like they usually do, and not fucking tell them. And that's when problems like really arise. You just got to be honest with a guy like that and tell him what the deal is.
We'll see how that goes, but that's the brutality of the league. Some useful stats. We always talk about some stats just being absolutely ludicrous, like so many just weird caveats in a stat to make it newsworthy. But this was one that I thought was good. Nikola Jokic this season, 26.3 points, 10.9 rebounds, 8.8 assists per game at 57% field goal percentage. Now, only Russell Westbrook and Oscar Robertson have averaged 25, 10, and 8 in a season. Jokic will be the first one to do it on a 55% shooting clip, which is amazing. I mean, he's having one of the most historic seasons in NBA history. I don't think he's getting as much attention or love as he should, because he doesn't seem to be that Instagram hype guy that, he just goes about his business, plays hard, doesn't look great doing it at times, looks, as we've spoken about, sometimes he looks like, he's just plodding around and then he just throws in a hook, and that's the amazing thing about Nikola Jokic. His IQ is at an all-time level, his touch and feel is at an all-time level, but I mean, do you think his season, I wouldn't say underappreciated, because it's not, but it's definitely not. If that was LeBron James averaging those numbers, Jesus Christ, he'd be the president of the US.
Oh, no, yeah.
Would you agree?
No doubt about it. Yeah, look, he's not a sexy player to look at as far as his game. Like, it's like he brutalizes you down low. Any hook he throws up is probably 80%. Now, don't fuck with me with the analytics you ask, or with our followers, but like any hook he throws in, it's probably going to be an 85% chance it's going in. And like, he could score, he back to the basket, brutalize you, he could face you up. He's an unbelievable passer. Probably the top 5 or 6 passers I've ever seen. Anytime you try to double, he'll pass it out. He'll face you up and drive you. Look, his body was the biggest problem that he had coming in the league. And he's really helped himself with that. His body is much better. But the numbers he's putting up, 57% from the field, 86% from the line, 42 from the three. He's ridiculous. And he's unbelievable to watch. He's one of my favorite players to watch just because of the passing. Anytime a player's great and you throw on passing with that, it just makes him that much harder to stop. And yeah, he's phenomenal to watch. And he doesn't get enough press. I think the European thing sometimes, and then he's not flashy. He's not any of that.
He's in Denver.
Yeah.
Not a huge market by any means. And he's just somewhat quietly just putting up one of the craziest stat lines we've seen in the modern era, and I think he's a shoo-in for MVP. I think even if he, God forbid, gets hurt or doesn't play the rest of the season, you can't pass him up for MVP in my opinion. And betting agents and whatnot, have obliged and agreed. So that'll be interesting to watch. You brought to my attention some Draymond Green comments, which actually coincide with what we spoke about earlier. I'll read these comments out really quickly. There's more talent around the league than there's ever been. From a talent standpoint, the league is in a good space. But as pure basketball lovers who love competition at the highest level, I think they got to catch up in that department. They are soft as hell. I found myself trying to talk shit to some of these young dudes that won't talk, and they're like trying to be a friend. That's what these young dudes do nowadays. I don't understand it. So that would go with that was Draymond Green, of course, when asked about the competitiveness of today's players, basically saying they're more skilled and talented, but they don't have that bite, they don't have that dog in them. And look, I've kind of seen that towards probably the mid to end point of my career. Nothing would irk me more when guys would be friendly before games. I hated it. Like 2 hours before tip-off, no problem. But when you're walking out on the court, jump ball, ready to go to battle, I've seen it in NBA teams of mine. They might be a boy, hey man, what's up? Oh yeah, joking around, pulling each other's shorts, and I'm just like, man, like we're supposed to go to battle with you. And then I also saw it with my national team, where with the Australian national team at times we play against the US and some of these bigger countries, and guys will be idolizing who they're playing against, and you've already lost the battle, in my opinion, there. But I assume you'd agree with Draymond's sentiment there.
Yeah, I do agree. The competitive nature like that is, in some players, it's just they're sort of wired towards it. they're wired to be competitive. The older players, of course, the LeBron Jameses and the Steph Currys and the James Harden and Jimmy Butler and guys like that, like they didn't really grow up much into the social media world and sort of what these young guys have been growing up in. And the traveling, the AAU, they play against each other so much. Everything's buddy, the competitive nature and things like that. Young guys like Luka Doncic, right? He's big into like being friends with everybody. But he's sort of wired to be a killer and competitive. So like he's a little different. But most of these players are not like that. They're not competitive like that. They're not killers like that. And it's just sort of what they grew up in. Like the Larry Birds, the Michael Jordans, they didn't have any of that. They didn't grow up with it, and that's why when you talk about a lot of the older players that played before, talking about the young players, that's big. But they, all these players grew up with social media. They grew up with it now coming in the league. And I think they're just different. They are softer and a little bit more friendly to that effect. And I don't know if it's a good thing, bad thing, and different. I don't like it, but that's just sort of, regardless if we like it or not, it's here, and you got to be able to deal with it. And it's different. It's definitely different. And it's hard. That's why it's hard to get enforcers. Like, how many enforcers do you know in the NBA, Bogues, that like, those tough guys, those Charles Oakley type players, Bill Lambert type players. Now, you don't have either one of those in the league, but you've got like maybe 10 out of 450. You don't have that tough guy that hates everybody. Not hate everybody, but it has an edge. There's not many of them left in the league.
Oh, no, of course there isn't. And it is hate everybody. Like there were numerous guys back in the day that you knew they weren't going to eat or drink with anyone on opposing teams. Like, even if they were like grew up together or whatnot, they do that shit in the off season, and that was kind of the difference. That's changed a lot these days. Whether it's good or bad is arguable, but I mean, I don't think it's changed that much, because I do remember Jeff Van Gundy once called Michael Jordan the ultimate con man. I'm sure you'd remember those comments. It was mentioned in The Last Dance, and what he was referring to was exactly what we're talking about, where Michael Jordan he wasn't doing it being friendly with guys to be friendly with guys, because he wouldn't hang out with anybody. But he would see a guy at a restaurant the night before a game, or he'd see guys pre-game, and he'd laugh and joke and talk shit, make them feel good about themselves, and then drop 50 on their head. That was more, Sun Tzu, the Art of War type shit, right? So there was a little bit of that if you kind of compare eras, but he was doing it, I firmly believe, from a strategic point of view, where I'm going to make them feel all good about themselves. I'm best player in the world. They'll let their guard down, think they're my boy, and I'm going to drop 50 on their head and get out of that arena. Whereas today, there's definitely a noticeable difference about guys, being friends with each other, and guys not wanting to get into those battles. And we talk about Westbrook and the criticism he receives, and that's why I love Westbrook. Like, okay, yeah, at times he can be polarizing, at times he's can take bad shots, whatever. That's a whole separate argument. But he's going to try to bite your head off, no matter who you are. We saw it with Kevin Durant when he was at the Warriors. We saw it with former teammates of his. He didn't give a shit who you were. If you didn't have the same color jersey on as him, he's trying to kill you. And I think that's what fans love to see, especially if you're paying $150, $200 of your hard-earned money to go and watch this game, and you got guys, lollygagging, quote unquote, the American terminology of just being friends and laughing and joking. It's like, why am I paying for this shit? Like, you're not putting everything into it. I'm putting everything into my money to come to this game. I'm working, 9 or 5 hard shifts, whatever I'm doing, to spend some money and go once every couple of weeks, 'cause I can afford to do that. We might tune out.
I think there's a lot more going on in the NBA now than there was before. So before, those guys didn't see everybody. They didn't see a lot of it. You can't contact people as much. You didn't have cell phones. You didn't have that, especially in that earlier era. And I just think players are wired differently today. And it's just one of those things and you got to deal with. And look, do you want to see the brutality of the 80s? Probably not the brutality of it. No, more like you probably want to see it more like in the mid to late 90s, that you want to see that today, where guys were chippy, they were competitive, everybody didn't love everybody. But yeah, but it's here, and that's what we got to deal with. And it's a little different. And, I worry about the future of it, because there aren't going to be many people wired like Luka Doncic that's competitive like that. That is a nice kid and all that, but like he's a little bit like Jordan like that too, where like he's buddy, but he wants to destroy you. I was around MJ a lot, especially in the early 2000s, and you could tell he's like that. Even after he's playing, you could tell that he wanted to be buddies with guys. They sort of feel like he did it with Antoine Walker. He would I remember we were playing him in an exhibition game or during the season, and I was out of my hotel room. I couldn't sleep. I went down to the casino. It was like one of those casino games, and here's fucking MJ and Antoine Walker gambling till about 3:30 in the morning. Buddy. And then fucking he would just bust his ass for like 30. And it's just, that's how he was. And yeah, it's interesting. I understand where he's coming from for sure. And there's definitely some, it's a valid statement. It is. You don't get it like you did before. Players are definitely different.
Agree, and that's just something we're just going to deal with in the new era. But last thing we're going to touch on in our long form, college. So you sent me some notes about the transfer portal. I'm trying to get my head around this, and I'm wondering if you added an extra 0 on this, or you fucked up your numbers. But the transfer portal now, anyone can put their name in the transfer portal in the college Division 1 system. I assume Division 2 as well, but we're just talking D1. There's over 1,900 names on the list. Is that right?
Yes, 1,900. I checked it.
What? So I've done some quick math with a calculator. There's 351 Division 1 schools. So I've times that by 12. That gives us 4,212 players in Division 1 college basketball. You're telling me almost half of college players right now are wanting to transfer?
Yeah, 13 scholarships each team. Yeah, they got 13 scholarships. So it's like 4,500 or something like that total scholarships.
Just over a third. That's insane.
Yeah.
What is going on?
So, Bogues, here's what goes on now. The NCAA, it used to be when you transfer schools, it used to be you had to sit out a year. It doesn't matter if your coach got fired, didn't matter whatever. If you're playing, not playing, if you want to transfer, it's a year. If you want to transfer in league, it was 2 years. So if you want to transfer to a school in your league, in the last couple of years, they made this rule where when you transfer, you get automatic eligibility. There's 2 ways to get automatic eligibility. You could transfer one time in your 4 years, your 4 years of eligibility, and you could be eligible right away the next year. The second thing is if you graduate in 4 years and you only played 3 in your first 4, if you redshirted or what have you, you could transfer to another school to do a 5th year automatic eligibility. You can go to another school. You just have to go to another school that doesn't have your major. So that's how you get around it. So what they're dealing with now, Bogues, is this. It's just typical fucking shit that kids do today. And look, there are certain situations where I could see this happening, but we'll talk about that in a second. But like what they're dealing with now is if a player doesn't play right away as a freshman, there's no more like easing into a player's career where, all right, son, you're not going to play that much as a freshman. And as a sophomore, you'll play like considerable more minutes. And then junior, senior year, you're going to be our starter and our go-to guy. If you don't play a guy at a high or at any level, if you don't play somebody their freshman year, they're gone. Okay. If you're at a smaller school and you have a guy that averages like 11 a game as a freshman, he's gone. He's transferring. He's gone. He's going to a higher level school. So it's really hard. And it's like NBA free agency. All my friends that are assistant coaches, they check that thing like the waiver wire in July in the NBA season and the off season. And they work that transfer portal. So you get players who, if you like, there's no more easing into it. So right away, if there's not instant gratification, they're gone. And then if they do well at your school, they're gone. If they don't enter the NBA, they're gonna transfer to another school, and they get instant eligibility.
Yeah, I mean, there has to be penalties for that kind of stuff. Look, every now and then you get a player that just doesn't fit in with a squad, or a coach is a dick to him, or he's been over recruited. Okay, fair enough. They should be able to transfer, but they had to sit out a year, so there were repercussions to your decision. I think it's as we see with most things. I think it's swayed too far in the player's favor. You can't. You're going into a school and things don't go your way. You've got a bit of adversity. You've got a senior or a junior who's playing ahead of you, and most times rightfully so. He could be a school legend. He could be a guy that's doing all the right things, showing up early, staying late. And just because you've got a name as a high school American doesn't mean shit. And then a coach plays you 14 minutes a game because of it. Oh, he's hating on me, I'm going to transfer. That's just the easy way out. I just don't think that's good for the long-term development of a lot of kids. And I think the NCAA, as much as we knock them, they need to look at this and tweak that back to, you can transfer, but you got to give something up if you're transferring. You can't just go into a free pool and walk away.
Here's my thing. If a coach got fired or he quit and went somewhere else, I think you should be able to transfer right away. Like, you went to the school for them. And so I get it. If they leave, I can see them leaving.
That's fair. I agree with that.
Yeah, but if it doesn't go your way, look, you made a commitment to that school. And if it doesn't go your way, sure, you could transfer, but it's going to take you a year. You get 5 years to play 4 anyway. So you're going to lose that year in transfer. But like, if it doesn't go your way, or you did really well and you want to go to another school, no, fuck that. Like I know, you hear a lot of chirping online and on social media about, the NCAA, they're raping and pillaging these kids, their careers, and they don't care about them. Players got to be able to go. Coaches make all this money. I get it. If a coach has the freedom to leave, the player should have a freedom to leave if the coach leaves. But if it doesn't go their way, and this is why players fail at all levels. It used to be, Bogues, like I coached AAU at a high level when I was like 18, 19 years old. We won like 3 national. We won Vegas, which was the biggest tournament in the country, like 3 years out of 4 or 2 years out of 3, I forgot. And what ends up happening is like the good players, the really good players would play AAU. The players that weren't as good went to camp and developed during the summer, played in summer leagues, and they didn't play in the summer. But what happened now, the parents finally figured it out. Well, Johnny couldn't make an AAU team, or they got cut from an AAU team when they didn't play. They start their own team. This is what happens in this country. Kids change schools 3 times in high school. They change 5 AAU teams in 4 years. They switch schools 3 times. And that's like when you look at a player, and when you got him in the NBA and you saw that he had 3 high schools, 2 colleges, a JUCO, like they had all this change, that tells you something. Either they're an asshole and something's happening behind the scenes, or they can't take adversity. Everybody likes to tweet all this shit about adversity. Oh, I'm a strong man, and they quote all these bullshit philosophers. But when they get punched in the face realistically, they just go to another team that's going to like give them what they want. And look, I get it. Like you want better for your career, but you also should be a person of your word. You gave the school your word, and you jump ship because you average 12 a game as a freshman. And they think that like if they don't go to Kentucky, Kansas, North Carolina, or Duke, no one's going to see you. It's a lot better. And most of these guys who transfer, Bogues, and they transfer up, I'd say about 85% of them, they don't do shit when they get there. They just want to go for the bigger school, and they end up getting, their numbers takes a hit. Their pro prospects take a hit. I'd rather go to a smaller school, dominate, be a 3-year player of the year in the conference, or a 3-year all conference, and a one-time player of the year, and lead them to a couple of times in a tournament, to the NCAA tournament. Scouts are going to see that. They're going to see the numbers. They're going to see that you were the guy for 4 years or 3 years or however long you were there, and that you battled through adversity. If you're somebody who didn't play a lot as a freshman but battled through it, that's going to teach you those lessons of being competitive, to be, to try to take your game to the next level when that shit doesn't go your way all the time. And this is our problem in society. When it doesn't go your way, I can go to another team. And I just think it's wrong.
Yeah, and I spoke to Ray Accolades. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that name, but he was my coach at the University of Utah my sophomore year. A long-time college coach, 30, 40 years in the game. As both an assistant, he was a head coach to Mark Few for many years at Gonzaga. So he had the exact same sentiment. I touched base with him on the My Journey pod, and he finished that with the same. It's just too easy to quit these days. And look, most coaches aren't going to give up a scholarship to a guy that they just want to hate on. That's not realistic. Scholarships these days are like gold, because you mess around too much, you can lose a scholarship here and there. You recruit the wrong guy. Now all of a sudden you got to play your backup, a guy you thought was going to be a backup because that other guy's no good. No coach wants to recruit a guy and not play him. Every now and then, a minority, yeah, of course, there's sometimes guys just get screwed. They might get over recruited. I had a teammate of mine that went to Baylor back when they were sanctioned, Aaron Bruce, and he signed there when they went through all that bullshit where that guy killed himself or got shot or whatever happened. So he went there regardless. He stuck with them and said, look, I know there's issues. I'm going to stay. I gave you my commitment. I'm going to come there. And he led all freshmen in scoring in the Big 12 and in the nation, playing in the Big 12. He led all freshmen in scoring, and he averaged 19 a game. And he was a point guard / 2 guard by his 3rd or 4th year. He got so over recruited once those sanctions eased that he was then the 3rd, 4th string guard. And he was potentially on NBA radar as a 2nd round pick, and he got screwed, and he probably had a legitimate gripe to transfer. But those cases are rare. The other side of the coin is, like you said, it's like, I should be playing more than that guy. Well, put the work in. Like, no coach is not going to want to play you if you're doing the right thing. Like that, I don't buy that. Yeah, well, okay, 1 out of a million times you have a college coach or high school coach where their son's playing for their team and there might be a bit of politics, but that's very, very rare. But no coach is going to want to recruit you, give you a scholarship, waste the money on you, housing, all that. Their budget goes towards you, and then be like, I don't want to play you because I don't like you. That's just nonsensical. So I agree. I think it's easy to just quit and move on, and it factors in with devices. And I'm guilty of being on my phone too much. It factored in with like the next thing. Oh, this isn't good. I'm going to do something else. And that at a young age then correlates to, what we're seeing with college basketball. It's like, I don't want to put the 3 months effort in to try and play. I'm just going to go somewhere else where I can play. Well, life doesn't work like that. And I hope the NCAA somehow addresses this. 1,900 out of 4,500 players should not be on a transfer portal. A fair number would be maybe 500. You get a 1/8, 1/10, maybe. But 1,900, that's an alarming number. By the way, I have the Lakers Brooklyn game on in the background as we spoke about the Clippers earlier on. What the hell's going on there? They're not beating the bad teams. Well, the Lakers without LeBron and AD are up 107-83 right now in Brooklyn with KD and Kyrie and pretty much everyone playing but James. So that's quite a loss. But we'll move on to fact and fake news. What do you have for us?
All right, Bogues. Schroeder. According to ESPN, Brian Windhorst, who spoke to the situation on his most recent Hoop Collective podcast, the Lakers offered Schroeder a max extension a month ago, and he turned it down. The most that Schroeder can extend for under his current contract is 4 years, $84 million. Good move, fact, or fake news?
Fake news. He didn't make a good decision. That's a fantastic contract for Schroeder. I don't think he's a max starting point guard on the Lakers. I mean, I think he's helped them a lot. I think if he's running your team, say you're I don't know, who are you, Detroit, and you throw $84 million for him to be that guy, I wouldn't throw that money at him to be that guy. So he did not make a good decision, in my opinion. I think he should have taken that money, probably won a championship or two along the way, and had a very good career. You?
Yeah, I agree. It's not a good decision. Fake news. Look, Dallas has money. I haven't studied the cap numbers, but I know Dallas has about $30 million, and they're not looking to give it to him right now unless, a bunch of things probably don't fall their way. I've seen crazy things happen in free agency. It's probably sometimes in best, the agent's probably saying the best situation is to wait and wait until like something falls through. But for $84 million to be in LA, that team's going to be pretty good for a little bit, for at least 2 more years anyway, until they try to sign somebody else. To say no to $84 million, that's
$21 million a year in LA.
Yeah.
Do you know what he could get if he's on the open market? Is it just an extra year?
I thought you can do 5
with your own team, right?
With your current team. So they traded for him. So I assume.
Yeah, I think you're right. So that I then go to say he's not getting more from anyone else, really.
I don't think so. Like I said, Dallas has a lot of money, and they're trying to put a third player with, Porzingis and Luka. And I'm sure they're going to be going after players, although there's a lot of players that came off the board that signed extensions and things this summer, but they're going to be hunting, and Schroeder's a good name, and he could score and things. I just don't see, unless it's like a short-term deal. Like if I'm Dallas and I strike out on some guys, I'd be like, all right, maybe I'd give him 2 years, 40, and, partial guarantee the second or fully guarantee the second. But I'm not really looking to give him $100+ million. He wouldn't be my A list. He probably wouldn't even be he'd be borderline B list on my free agent, especially if I have big money. I mean, that's a lot of chunk of your cap to spend on Schroeder, who's he's a good guy. Don't get me wrong. He can score. He can do some things, but $84 million to be in LA, to play with LeBron. You don't have to be the guy every night and carry the mail every night. That's a tough one. I think it's a tough situation. I think it's a wrong situation, but I think that they could extend him down the road. It's probably not over. They could probably come back to this contract if they want to. They can't really do much with their cap stuff with LeBron's contract and AD's contract, and they extended Kuzma. So there's not a lot they can do, but that was a little weird to me, turning down $84 million.
Yep.
Bogues, Russell Westbrook, numbers 21-8, 10.6 rebounds, 10.7 assists. With these numbers, should he be considered an MVP candidate despite Washington's record?
I'm going to go fake news. I think if Washington were somewhere, in the mix a little bit higher, I'd say 5 to 8 5 to 9. I'd consider it the 13th as we speak. So I think the record plays a little bit of a part for me. But insane numbers, can't take away with what he's done, and goes into our conversation last week about, should a championship define a player that's as, like a Russell Westbrook with the numbers that he's had. But I still value winning a little bit. I think if you're putting up those eye-popping numbers, you should still move the needle a little bit more in the win column. I'm not saying you should be first, second, or third in the East, but they should be at least in the hunt for a playoff. And they technically still are, because the East is so bad. There's a massive drop-off, but I think the record needs to be better, so I'm going to go fake news.
Yeah, I go fake news too. I hate agreeing with you all the time, but there's 16 and a half out. They're 3 out from the 10 spot, and for the play-in stuff, there's 7 out. Obviously, they're not. They've only got about 21 games left, so they're not really going to make a run for like out of the play-in situation. So they're a play-in team. I agree. Like, those numbers are great numbers. Don't get me wrong, but like, I feel as though the MVP, you got to be, in my opinion, in the top 2 or 3 in your conference, to really be, considered an MVP. I think if you're putting up huge numbers in your teams like 9, 10, 11, 12, I just don't think that. I think there's, unless you're putting up like 60 and 30, and Will Chamberlain's not here anymore to do that. So, guys like that, then you maybe say, okay, but obviously let's talking, reality. Those numbers are great numbers, but I just can't turn the corner and give somebody who's 19 and 32, 16 and a half games out of the playoffs, out of the one spot. I can't, and probably going to lose in the play-in. I can't give them an MVP nod. All NBA, sure. You could give them, you probably think about it, but definitely not MVP.
Agreed.
Bogues, I'm going to give you another hypothetical. You got Michael Porter Jr. Okay, I'm going to give you his numbers. Putting up 17, 7.6 rebounds, 1 assist, shooting 44 from the 3. Is he your most improved player from this season, for this season for the NBA?
Fake news. I think he's...
fuck, me too. Go ahead. What do you got?
I have it. I'm looking at I have to look up who else is in the running, but I mean, Julius Randle's number 1. He's the favorite by the bookies. I'll give you the top 3. It's Julius Randle 1, Jeremy Grant 2, Christian Wood 3. I think Julius Randle's had a phenomenal season out of kind of ups and downs, injured early in his career. I think he's more than deserving of it. I think Michael Porter Jr. has had a fantastic year when looking at his past couple of seasons, and that's mainly because he's just getting consistent minutes. He's actually healthy. He's in the rotation. He had a phenomenal year, not taking anything away from Michael Porter Jr., but fake news, I'm giving it to Julius Randle.
You got too many fucking social media followers from Vegas pumping you with good information, man, because I'm going with the same thing.
It was a quick Google.
Quick Google, okay. I can't spell Google, so yeah, I go with Julius Randle too. Like, I always liked Randle. I thought he was sort of like a Zach Randolph. Probably could be a little bit. I didn't think he had the killer instinct that Zach had, but he had a little bit more like juice, athletic ability, and things. And he's had a good career, not a great one. Up to this point, he's sort of like a vigilante because he's gone from like a couple of different situations team wise, and never really won, and I figured he'd have to be the best player on their team this year, and he is, and he's putting up huge numbers, and they're winning, and they're playing through them, and they're winning. They're not dynasty winning, but right now they're a game under 500. No one expected them to even be close to this, and he's putting them in situations to win, and he's getting them better, and they're playing through them in so many different situations, handling the ball, posting up, pick and pop, pick and roll, and he's had such an impact on their winning. And that's the thing. Like, if young players at all levels, there's a difference between putting up 22 points a game and losing, and being like, putting up 30 a game and losing, but putting up 22, not only putting up great numbers and winning or close to winning, and taking a team to a higher level than they've been in a few years. My hat's off to him, man. I think he's a shoo-in to win the most improved player.
And the big thing for me, he's shooting 40% from 3, and not just one a game. He's shot 255 3-point. He's had 255 3-point attempts, made 104 of them for 40%. That is huge for his game, because I was with him in LA. And that was the one knock on him. He just can't shoot the ball well enough. We need to play him at the 5. He's an undersized 5 at stretches. He's positionless, right? Not anymore. He's knocking that 3 down, and he's taken some tough ones. I've watched a few of their games over the last month. Off the dribble, pull-ups, hand in his face. These aren't just feet set wide open, dare shots. He's shooting that ball at a phenomenal clip, and that has just it's done wonders for his game. And Thibs, as we know, is going to play him 40 minutes. He's going to let him play through mistakes, ups and downs, and he's taken that with 2 hands, and I couldn't be happier for him. He gets a bad rap at times, but he was a fantastic teammate. You could see he wanted to be great. He was in LA with me when they didn't know what the hell they were doing. They were banking for that LeBron, so it was like kind of a buy year, essentially. They were just loading up to get enough assets to make sure they could get LeBron. So he was caught up in that, and that's why he was moved around, to an extent, because he was just caught up in the ramifications of the LeBron sweepstakes. So you felt bad for him. He got labeled with this unfair label, in my opinion, and I could not be happier for him. So he's definitely my most improved player.
And he's playing for a coach. He's like a Bill Belichick without the rings, right? Like any team that Thibodeau goes to is going to organize the team. He knows what it takes to win, play winning basketball, especially on the defensive end. And to be able to take his game and say, look, I know you put up numbers before, but this is how you have to play to be a winning player. And this is what wins in this league. There's nobody who knows winning more than that guy, as far as like what it takes to get a team ready to compete. And this is what he did, and he changed the makeup of that team. Like you said, New York for the last decade has done the same thing. They fucked everything up. They expect like these big time players just to sign in free agency. They want this cap room, which cap room is the most overrated fucking thing you could ever have for an organization. Because it ain't gonna if you don't win, if you're not a winning team or in a great city, like. No one's even going to consider you're going to get these B and C level guys and have to way overpay them. So what they've done is it's changed the makeup of the team. You got RJ Barrett, who is a really good young player. You've got Julius now. So those 2 guys are the cornerstones. Obi Toppin's really struggling right now. Top pick of theirs of last draft. And that, people are sort of throwing the bust word around for him. Now, I won't say that because it's only his first year, and he's got time and he had a little bit of injury issue. But like Randall single-handedly changed the makeup of that team because now these 2 guys, they could build around Randall and Barrett. They're going to get free agents with, Leon Rose, Worldwide West in the mix. They're going to get guys, but now you've got a good coach, a high-level coach. You've got 2 young players that you could build around. You've got little pieces like Mitchell Robinson, who's a very good roller, good defensive player, guy who puts up 8 and 8. You got like guys coming off the bench, but like now they're building and they're going to have picks and they're going to have money and they're going to have money to spend. And New York's a destination, but they're going to have to win. And I think they're proven right now. They're not done yet. I mean, it's still 20 plus games to play. But now you're putting yourself in a position where free agents are going to, they're not going to get the high level guy this summer or maybe even the next summer. But right now, if you keep doing it the way they're doing it with a great coach and good young players and they're developing like Emmanuel Quickley, who's a guy that people thought that they drafted him a little too high from Kentucky. He's a big surprise, averaging 12. Alec Burks, 12 points a game. Nerlens Noel, one of the best backup centers in the league. So they're putting together things, and Julius Randle is a big part of that, for sure.
No doubt. I'm looking forward to seeing the Knicks make the playoffs for once and battle deep. But we'll move on to Q&A to touch on what we just spoke about not long ago, actually. Hey, Bogues and Pro, love the podcast and all the topics you touch on. Can you speak about your experience in LA and how you felt at the time when they traded you? I remember you said something about Magic Johnson's handling of your trade and that it was unprofessional. I'm a huge Lakers fan because of Kobe and was disappointed at the time to know that they treated you poorly. Also, I love Tasmania is introducing a new team in the NBL. However, do you believe the league will continue to grow and introduce new teams? I'd love for the Crocs to return to Townsville. Thanks. That's from Matt from Spotterswood in Townsville. First off, your NBL question. Look, I think they need to continue to keep looking at different markets, but you just want to be careful that you're not putting teams in just to put teams in, as we saw in the past, and they last 3 or 4 years, go bankrupt, go under. That's never a good thing. So we'll watch that space. But my time in LA, look, I wasn't traded first and foremost. It was just a tough time in my life. I just had a child in 2016 in Dallas and then went on from Dallas, broke my leg in Cleveland, rehabbed that in the off season. The Lakers called, had a spot, and they said, look, we'll bring you in on the vet minimum. And the discussion I had with my agent was, look, I don't want to go on a non-guarantee just because I got a young kid. I don't want to move to LA and then something happens. And we went back and forth to the Lakers. They wouldn't guarantee it, but they gave me my word and said, look, we want the non-guarantee because of your injury history, and if you come in and you're mid-season you get hurt and you're out, we want to be able to waive you. We want that flexibility. And I said, look, that's fair enough, but just know I'm coming in off a broken leg, so I still need to get healthy. And they're like, we're not worried about preseason in the first month or so, but once you're back on the court, we want you back on the court. So I got over there and had a bit of issues with my back, just coming back from a broken leg, so a bit of back spasms, just your normal stuff. And I finally, started to get healthy. November, December was fine, and everything was going well. And there was a call Rob Pelinka made to my agent. He said, I want to catch up with Bogues and see how the team's doing. So we caught up, I think, before a game at Staples, and Rob was just kind of, you're the veteran in the locker room. How do you see our guys? What's going on? We're in a bit of a losing streak at that point. So just gave him some honest feedback about myself and the guys and what's going on culturally. And he appreciated that. And I thought all was good. And then later on that night, my agent calls me and says, the deadline's tomorrow for non-guaranteed contracts then becoming guaranteed. And they've said, yeah, you're all good, this, that. And then literally 30 minutes later in the car, my agent calls me back and says, Magic and Rob want to speak to you in the morning on a conference call. So I was like, yeah, I'm getting waived then. I was, no, Rob's told me you're good, this, that. And I was like, nah, if Magic's getting on the call, I barely spoke to him all year, like something's going on. So holds been owned, made the phone call, the group chat the next morning, and they just, they said, look, we're not doing too well this year. We're not going to make the playoffs. We're going to waive you. So that's how that went down. And look, I wasn't too shocked by it, but I just felt like I was kind of sold a lemon to an extent because I wouldn't have went over knowing those were the circumstances. If I was hurt at the time, I wouldn't have had any issues, but I was basically, I was lied to, and that's just the reality of the business. They were doing what was best for them. They were in tank mode at that point. LeBron came the season after, and I just got caught in the repercussions of all that. And the hard thing was, like I said, I moved my wife and my child was over there. My wife was heavily pregnant with our second. So I was more worried about my off the court stuff than I was on, and that's why it just disrupted our life a little bit. And then ended up, coming back to Australia for my grandfather's funeral, to cut a long story short, and then didn't fly back to sign with a team that was making a playoff push in the buyout period because of everything that was going on. So the rest is history. But yeah, look, I'm over it now, obviously, but in the moment, more so thinking about my wife and kids and the absolute shit show that it caused with moving out of a house and living in LA and all that kind of stuff was, it left a little bit of a bitter taste in my mouth, but that's the business, right, bro?
Yeah. I mean, look, we talked about it in the last couple of podcasts. The team has to do what's best for the team, and they're going to lie to you. Teams are going to lie. I don't care what organization you're talking about. They don't lie all the time, but they're going to lie in situations like this. And they're not, they want to keep everybody motivated to continue to push their team as best they can. And that's why they're not going to tell you things like this in advance. They're going to do it the last minute. They're going to be a little dirty about it. And that's what happens. Same thing with players, though. Players will do the same thing in free agency and things like that, and keeping the teams on the hook for a while and then doing what's best for them. You got to understand that, look, there's a difference when you're a fan and expect everything to be like a magic, everything's players love each other, they love the team loves the players, no one's lying to each other, everybody can trust each other. It just doesn't work that way. Both sides have to do what's best for them. And then you throw an agent in there who's trying to do the best, for their client and all that. There's a lot of lying that goes on. It just is what it is. It's not. I'm not breaking who killed JFK here. Everybody, this isn't world news. Everyone sort of knows it. That's inside of it. If you're not inside of it, you think, that fucking they lied to him. It's the first time they ever did that. That's bullshit. No. They do that. They have to. It's a dirty part of the business. I've seen it. I've heard millions of stories about GMs saying, oh, no, you're our guy. Don't worry about it. Boom, 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 boom. And then they get traded a fucking hour later. It just happens. And players do the same thing. Oh, no, I got you July 1, midnight. We're going to sign with you guys. And then you can't get them on the fucking phone for 4 hours. And Woj is breaking that they're signing with the Milwaukee Bucks for 4 years, $30 million. it happens. It's just the shit that happens.
Yeah, DeAndre Jordan, right, with Dallas.
Yeah. Oh shit. It's fucking yeah. How about this? So we're signing. We do it right. So I'm texting the guy. He's a big I found out from somebody from the Clippers that he's a big Breaking Bad fan. So I'm fucking talking. I'm texting him. I'm out. It's like July 4th or whatever. I'm out with my family at the fireworks. I'm texting him about fucking like Breaking Bad shit. We're going over our favorite episodes and shit. Talking about his free throw routine. We're good. And then like a day or two later, we're interviewing interns, and we're at a restaurant interviewing interns, and I'm reading like breaking story, like. They got the Clippers have DeAndre Jordan trapped in his house, trying to get them to veto the trade or not sign. It's crazy, man. Like crazy shit happens in the NBA, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's just one of those things. It's a fucking circus with no tent. At least when you go to the circus, there's a tent, and the circus stays in the tent. In the NBA, there's no tent. It's a circus in 30 cities.
Great analogy.
And it's not. Yeah, it's not going anywhere anytime fast.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Next one, Andrew and Pro. Throughout your experience in the NBA, what's your favorite and least favorite type of offense that you played in and seen, and why? Would love to hear both your perspectives. Big fan of the podcast. For me, obviously, the Golden State Warriors was, the pinnacle for me. I just love ball movement. The other offense I liked, Scott Skiles ran some really good stuff. A lot of post, high elbow stuff. A lot of ball movement, a lot of misdirection stuff with counters. So wasn't so much free flowing like it is today, but he just had a really good X's and O's mind and had a really good playbook in his head at all times, even off the board. So those two systems for me, most of the systems I played in were ball movement. I mean, Dallas was interesting when I was there because we did a bit of delay stuff at times because that was a big strength of mine, was handling the ball at the top and handoffs and back cuts and all that. And then we went away from that and just went back to basic pick and roll to what they're running now. I haven't had a system that I absolutely hated. I think early on in my NBA career, under Terry Stotts' first reign, we went to a lot of ISO stuff for Michael Redd early in my career. I just hate ISO basketball, so I wasn't a fan of playing in ISO stuff. But that's a whole other skill you have to learn. Playing with ISO guys, you got to learn how to space for them. And my second time around with the Warriors, when we went ISO with KD, started to figure out what spots on the floor I needed to get to, either for an offensive rebound or if they come for a double, I need to stretch the floor to open up our shooters. So you got to figure it out along the way. So for me, ball movement offenses, favorite of mine, and then ISO heavy offenses, not a favorite as a player. What about you, Pro?
Yeah, I liked what Phoenix ran with D'Antoni when they had Nash and Stoudemire. I liked having 4 out and spreading the floor and rolling Stoudemire and then waiting for somebody to suck in, put 2 on Nash, someone to suck in a bump, Stoudemire rolling, and then you opened up all these shooters and drivers. I'm a big fan of it. I don't like where the offense is now, where it turns into 5 out. But I like having that one roller. I don't think having 2 post-ups. I'd rather just the one. I think that works in spreading the floor. But I don't like where it goes with the 5 out these days. But I like their offense because if you have a good roller and a point guard that could score and also hit the roller and the lob, or make that perimeter pass when the defense sucks in, I like that. Big fan of it. It's funny, like early on in my career, I really liked the triangle. And I ended up hating the triangle, especially working for Kobe at the end of his career, because like you said, it's a lot of like isolation basketball in the sense that, there's not a lot of screening that goes on. There's not a lot of pick and roll that goes on. It's just like isolated in the wing. This guy's got to create. I love the interior passing of the triangle. I really enjoyed that, especially when Gasol, when Gasol was in LA, Gasol and Bynum, they played it really well. Lamar Odom did it well. But I didn't like the triangle at the end. Kobe wasn't a huge fan of it the last year or two. He wanted more pin downs, coming off screens, make it a little bit easier, so he doesn't have to wear his legs out as much, creating when he got the ball in the wing. Obviously, you like to post up. But yeah, I was a big fan of D'Antoni stuff early on, with the Phoenix stuff. And I wasn't a big fan of the triangle at the end of it.
Yeah, the triangle I think it's an offense that you need specific players for, rather than the other way around, right? You can't just sign any players and put them in the triangle. So that's where I think it has its issues. But thanks for your question there, Tian Tang. A really good question, and I know he's an avid follower of the podcast. Has sent in a few questions along the way. So thanks for that. The last one isn't a question, Pro. So I thought I'd just get some feedback for us about last podcast where we had some housekeeping issues around our swearing. But I'll read this through. It's from Joe Adami, and we appreciate responses like this because it makes us think we're half normal. But hey, Bogues, just finished listening to your basketball podcast, episode 15. I had to rewind your intro and listen to it twice to be sure that I heard you correctly. I have some free advice for your listeners. If you don't like hear Pro dropping the F-bomb 4 times in one sentence, don't listen to the podcast. That's in all capitals. If you don't like the sound of someone taking the piss out of themselves, so that's Australian for making fun of yourself, don't listen to the podcast. And if you take fat jokes personally, don't listen to the podcast. My 9 and 11-year-old kids listen to your podcast religiously. Ooh, that's interesting.
Oh boy.
No.
Sorry, brother. Hey.
If I can teach my kids to determine, I think this is a great point, by the way. If I can teach my kids to determine the difference between right and wrong, appropriate and inappropriate, and the reasons why some people cuss versus why some don't, there is no excuse why a grown-ass man or woman can't do the same. My kids know that cussing is not good. My kids know that making fun of people is not acceptable. Just because you see or hear other people doing it doesn't mean you condone it. The world is filled with all different walks of life that are capable of saying highly offensive, inappropriate things. Learn to accept it and get over it. Stop pretending the world is perfect. Put the effort into educating your kids and or yourself why people do that. Learn from it, shape yourself based on your own ethics and morals, and see what you perceive as being a model citizen. Pro, keep talking shit and eating your way through life if that's what makes you happy. Bogues, keep driving that honesty train and throw all the PCBS out the window. There are many reasons why people tune into this podcast, but I'm sure the rawness and honesty is one of the biggest draw cards. Don't start giving people a reason to tune out. Love your work as always, and that was from Joe Adami. Joe, rest assured we weren't gonna change anything at all. We just thought we'd address the concerns and let people know that we'll do our best to not do what they want, but let's be honest, we're not going to do our best. We're going to continue to be ourselves, and this is why our podcast, the numbers are getting bigger every week, and people appreciate listening to us. So just some good reinforcement there, Pro.
Yeah, for sure. Look, I'm not fake, Bogues. You've been around me, long enough in Dallas and other places. Like, I'm pretty genuine at how I work. I'm a ball buster. I bust everybody's balls. I can take it. Look, the guys I grew up with in Boston, I got destroyed from like age 8 to like, I'm still getting destroyed. And it's all shit talking. And if you're not thick skinned, you're fucked, because they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop. They're not going to stop. It's like, Goodwill Hunting on steroids. That's my guys that I hung out with and still do in these days. And you got, that's just the way I talk. In Boston, that's what we do. We shit talk. And that's how I grew up. Now, look, I don't swear around my kids. I don't swear around my family. I swear around basketball. I swear around my friends. That's just how I am. That's just how I was brought up. And I'm pretty respectful. And I'll let it go here. And that's about it. One thing, do you rather me swear on this thing, like, and be like this nice guy, like this like priest, and then like really swear in the background, or an asshole, on behind the scenes where no one can see me? Or, do you want me to tweet out, Bible verses, but also send strippers dick pics? Like, do you want me to be that guy? No, like, I'm pretty fucking genuine. Like, I don't give a fuck if I was making $10 million a year or what I'm making now, less than minimum wage. I'm just going to be the same. I treat everybody the same. I act the same. This is not an act. People who hang out with me, I talk shit. Ask Dirk Nowitzki. I put him into an early grave probably daily, the shit I would tell him, and he just laugh it off. You just have to have thick skin and have fun. And like, I don't want to be on a podcast that it's fake. Most podcasts are fake. You see the people who run those podcasts in real life, they treat people like complete dog shit mostly, and they don't have time for people. I do. I try to strike up conversations and talk shit. That's what I do. And that's what Bogues does. And that's why I want to be here, because it's a real sort of environment. It's not fake. This is the way we do it. And I apologize for people who think I do swear, but I'm not. Like, I do swear and I am vulgar, but I'm not like obscene. There's the difference, in my opinion, between talking shit and swearing a lot and being obscene and saying some stuff that's like cringeworthy. And we've been around those people, and it's, whatever. I'm not going to apologize for it. I'm like Popeye. I am who I am, and I'm not apologizing for it. But, like I said, I'd rather be that guy and just be open about it, and rather than that God-fearing man that cheats on his wife and sends out dick pics to strippers. I think
our swearing is a warm and cuddly type of swearing, though. So we have to give ourselves some kudos there. We're not getting guests on and motherfucking them and all that. It's a warm and cuddly banter type, and we have fun with it. And I don't think it's a huge deal. I mean, if kids are listening that are 11 and 12, and you got parents that are listening to the podcast with them, you can explain the context of swearing. There's a difference, and everyone swears. Kids swear. Everyone swears. It's a lot of it comes down to context and what you mean by it. And we're doing it more of a ball breaking type aspect rather than trying to actually insult people. So keep enjoying that. We appreciate that feedback. Now we have a very special guest pro, a potential NBA lottery pick in next year's or next season's NBA draft. Josh Giddey. We have a Q&A coming up. We're going to break his nuts a little bit, but let's just touch real quick on how you think that went as we lead into it. We've already done it. I think it was fantastic to hear us break down kind of his thoughts. We put him in a few interesting situations with some questions about how he'd handle different things. We also learned about his journey as a junior, and very well spoken. I can't speak more highly of him. Very well-rounded kid, and you'd hope he would be going into an NBA draft. He must have fantastic people around him that have advised him, because his interview was fantastic for a young fella, and I really, really enjoyed it. What about yourself?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. And what I wanted to do with that is I knew you were going to touch on his career, his upbringing, his junior play, and people that are around him. And what I wanted to do is ask him questions that he's going to see in draft meetings, where the teams like bring him in and, not only work him out, but also like ask him questions about certain situations. If you're drafted in this team, in this situation, what would you do? Put him a little bit on the spot. I thought he handled it well for an was he 19, Bogues?
18. He's 19 in October.
Yeah. So like 18-year-old kid, he's well-spoken, handles himself well. He's pretty grounded. And like you don't see that a lot out of an 18-year-old kid who would probably be a McDonald's All-American high school kid in the States. That's going to be probably a top 12, top 11, top 12 pick in the draft. And I thought he handled himself great. He was pretty cool to talk to. There's cool stories, and it's a cool way that he sort of communicated how his journey's gone so far. I thought it was good.
So without further ado, here is that interview. I hope you enjoy. All right, so we've got a special guest today, one of the brightest prospects in Australian basketball at the moment, a potential 2021 NBA lottery pick, not just a draft pick, but a lottery pick, has really surged in the boards lately. Adelaide 36ers star guard, Josh Giddey, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Bogues. Thanks for having me on.
No worries. As I said, best current prospect from Australia that we've had since obviously Ben Simmons. Born in Melbourne, Australia, the factory of producing NBA players. He's 6'8", 18 years old, very, very young, turning 19. Are you done growing, by the way?
I don't know. I grew another inch over the last couple of months, so hopefully I got a few more inches in me, but we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, 6'8" right now, pro. Maybe we can get him to 6'10". That'll help, right?
It would. It'd be great to get that big. So we'll see where we go.
Yeah, when they say 6'8", it usually means 6'6.5", but I won't reverse judgment that too much.
Yeah, and don't take him too seriously, Josh. He's going to take the piss out of you a little bit. but look, your junior accolades, we'll go through those real quick. Under 18 championships in 2019, averaged 28.3 rebounds, 6 assists a game. You led Vic Metro to the title. In 2020, January 2020, you went over with the NBA Global Academy to Barcelona. You earned the most valuable player honors following month, then went to the NBA All-Star Weekend in Chicago, Basketball Without Borders camp, and you were named as part of the All-Star group there. So we kind of, there's not a lot of information about your junior days, but I mean, talk us through your junior journey. Was it always smooth sailing? Was it up and down? I read that you were, real disappointed you didn't make the state team as a bottom major in under 18s. But I mean, take us far back to when you were a young fella and growing up with basketball and how all that went for you.
Yeah, so my junior career was pretty interesting because I played all my juniors through Tigers. My dad coached me right from under 12s. I think it started to under 18s, and then obviously you have all the under 16 state teams, under 8 state teams, which at the time is the most important thing in the world. And for me, it was because under 16 bottom age, I got cut really early in the process, and I made a promise to myself that I wasn't going to get cut again. And same thing happened. Top 8 16s, I didn't make it. Then I'm like, all right, this is it. And then came back the following year for bottom age 18, still didn't make it. And that's when I really took the foot down. And I really got in the gym, started working. I knew I had to improve my game to make the next state team. And then when the next tryouts rolled around, I was ready for it. And that was finally the first state team I made. And I happened to have a pretty good tournament in Townsville. We won the gold medal there. So, my junior career through the state ranks and the junior ranks I was always kind of, in the middle crop of players. I was never, a standout player, but I was never, right down the bottom. So I was kind of in that middle crop of guys, and it kind of motivated me to work because I wanted to be at that top end of players and kind of get the recognition. And I think top age 18s, I finally got that recognition that I was working so hard for. So it was good to see that work pay off. Yeah,
and I think we see that pro very, very often as well. A lot of the kids, a lot of players in the NBA kind of come on very, very late. I know a lot of Australian kids were the same. I mean, Ben Simmons kind of a freak that just dominated all levels for the most part, but most of us, Joe Ingles, Paddy, myself, Bainesy, we came on very, very late, and I think it's a blessing in disguise. As much as we hate it when we're in the moment, I think coming through those processes, if arguably, if you would have made that under 16 state team, would you have potentially worked as hard and put as much effort in later on in your junior career?
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I think about. I always used to think about, because at the time I was gutted because the under 16 state team is the be all end all for everyone at that age. And at the time I was crying in my car, I didn't make the team. But as I look back at it now, I kind of think, maybe it was a blessing in disguise that I didn't make it, because if I made it, maybe I was complacent, I got happy with myself, and I didn't work as hard. But so, I do look at it that way, because in the end, I am happy that I didn't make it, because it forced me to work hard, and I kept getting cut, and it kept forcing me to work harder. So, at the time, it's devastating because you want to be in those teams. But when you look back at it, when you get older, you kind of realize that they don't mean, making under 16 state team doesn't mean anything for the long run, because you see a lot of the guys that make those teams, they stop playing basketball after, 2 years later. So, it is a blessing in disguise for me personally, because I think if I did make those teams, I don't think I'd be where I'm at today. So, as I look back at it, I'm pretty happy I didn't make them teams.
Yeah, Josh, when people are going to ask you about your early years, I mean, not just us, but NBA teams, and, when they bring you in for a draft evaluation. And I think they like to see people be competitive, especially with most of the American kids. When they see it, then when they get adversity early on in their careers, they tend to especially when they were dominating their whole career and they finally see adversity, it's a gut check. And for you to get cut from those teams and to have sort of the competitive, will to get better, I think it says a lot about you as well as a young kid doing that. And I think it says a lot about your development. And that's a great thing to hear. And it's a great thing to tell people, as well as you just get that chip on your shoulder and you're competitive. That's a big part about being really good in this league.
Yeah, no, 100%. I've always kind of had a competitive, fire within me, and it really sparked when I got cut from all those teams I wanted to make. And as I touched on, when you were 14, 15 years old, you think those teams are like making an NBA All-Star game, and if you don't make it, the world's going to end. But as you get older, you look back at it and you start to realize that, it doesn't mean much. So, so that competitive edge has definitely always been there for me, and I've kind of always played with a bit of a chip on my shoulder.
Yeah, and tell us just about growing up. You have a really high basketball IQ, which we'll touch on a bit later. But is part of that just being dragged along with the older man at practice? Were you around a lot as a kid, around the Tigers, around Andrew Gaze, Leonard Copeland? Your father was a huge glue guy, part of that team. Kind of did the intangibles and the nitty gritty stuff that obviously the stars wouldn't do, and that's why they were so successful. But I assume you were dragged on a lot to those practices and just picked up the game that way.
Yeah, 100%. Because ever since I was, I can remember 2 or 3 years old, Dad came straight from playing when he retired, and he moved straight into a coach role with the Tigers. Then ever since I could really dribble a ball, I was always in practices, running around, kind of annoying all the guys at the holiday camp, seeing everyone. So I was kind of heavily involved with it right from a really, really young age. And that's kind of where I think the IQ comes from, because my dad and Drewy, they coached me all through my junior careers, and they taught a really kind of team-orientated system. And I think, it's a really pass-first dominant system, and that's kind of where my passing ability comes from, I think, because I've done it since I was 10 years old right until now. So having Drewy and my dad coach me was kind of the best thing for me, because they were obviously two very smart players. Obviously, Drewy's the best ever to play in the NBL. So to have those two with me through my junior careers was very beneficial.
And for those not familiar, Warwick Giddey is Josh's father. He played in the NBL, had a really long great career, won some championships, played in the late 80s and retired in the early 2000s, but predominantly with the Melbourne Tigers, started out in Wollongong, but that's what we're referring to when we go there. But give us a reason why. I've read a little bit about it, but you chose the NBL and the Adelaide 36 specifically over college. What was the reasoning? Was it your decision solely? Were your family involved? Do you have someone mentoring you? How did that all work out to come to fruition?
Yeah, that was a really tough decision for me because I was, early on, I was like really adamant on college. I was 99% college, and then I went on a visit to the University of Colorado, and I flew home, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to commit. And then I was, 99.9% committed there, and then I got back and I started talking with some people and then thinking about it more, and I decided the NBL route was going to be better for me, just in terms of being able to stay home. My family's here. I get to play with grown men in a professional league. With so many eyes on it at such an early age. And I think it was going to, fast track my development. So that was kind of the reasoning behind that. But it wasn't an easy decision at all, because all the times I went with the NBA Global Academy overseas on those trips, it was all college coaches recruiting. So all I ever spoke to was college people and coaches and all that kind of stuff. So I was really, really locked in on college. But then, I kept tossing and turning, and it wasn't an easy decision. But Mum was really set on me going to college as well. She didn't really want me to go the NBL pathway, but then I kind of talked her out of it, and she came around to it later, and I think she's pretty happy with it now.
Yeah, definitely a good decision that's worked out well, and I think it's a hard one when you're at that age, because every college coach, as pro would know, tells you everything you want to hear, and that you're going to be this, and you're going to be that, and we're going to cater towards you, and it can go either way in college. To be honest, you can all of a sudden have a coach get fired mid-season, you can have a program change, you can get over recruited, which happens to guys. So I think you made the right decision, and playing against grown men, I think that's going to be invaluable to you and your process. And I think it's arguably helped you not having to transition to a new country, a new system, probably a crazy college coach, depending on where you went to. Although Pro does think your coach is a little nuts, right, Pro?
Oh my God, he's like a fucking villain from a Jason Bourne movie. I mean, he's like, I watched him last night. I was half falling asleep because it was like 3:30 in the morning here. And I know Connor Henry a little bit because he played for the Boston Celtics. And I'm from Boston, a long time ago, and he scouted in the NBA for a while. But dude, he's like one of those like serious looking dudes. And when he goes off in those huddles, you're like, what the fuck? And then going off on those guys on that clip a couple of weeks ago when he said, you're over dribbling, the fucking water boy's over dribbling. That was pretty funny.
How have you transitioned to that? Just being a professional on a daily basis, obviously coming from the academy up in Canberra and where everything's kind of somewhat catered towards you and your needs. Where all of a sudden now you're a professional, you got to kind of be much more self-sufficient. Is your family in Adelaide? How are you handling all the off-court stuff and the transition?
Yeah, it's at the start. I mean, first off, I think the academy does a good job of kind of incorporating a professional environment in Canberra. So it kind of helped me transitioning into the 36er kind of group. But at the start, it was tough because, I've always come from junior. You rock up to training 2 minutes early, put your shoes on and get some shots up and leave. But here it's like you got weights, you got training, you got video, you got extra sessions after, before. So it's a complete different world. And I think at the start, it took me a while to get used to it and kind of get into the groove of it. But once I did, I kind of figured it out pretty early on, and it's just been smooth sailing from there. But being a professional to being a junior basketball is a complete different world. And I think the first couple of weeks are probably the hardest, but once you get adjusted, it's pretty smooth sailing from there.
Yep, from directing player development for Dallas for 6 years and sort of getting rookies when they come in, as far as getting in a routine every day. I think that's one of the most important things that any rookie could have. It didn't matter if you're, a second round pick, first round pick, lottery pick, having a routine, working for guys like Kobe Bryant and Rajon Rondo and guys like that are they think the game, they're invested in the game, routines every day. Regardless of how you're playing, I think are really important. Take us through your routine daily that you go through as a professional now. Just take us through a regular day, a non-game day, like a practice day, maybe getting ready for an opponent in the next day or two. Take us through a regular day for you and sort of the importance of that for your development.
Yeah, so a regular day would probably have weights at 9 o'clock and then probably 9 till 10-ish, and then The stadium's only a couple minutes away, so we head over there. And then usually most guys will get a workout in before practice. Then we'll watch video, come back on the court and have our main session. And then that'll probably be about 2 hours. And then once the session's done, guys will hang around, get another workout in after, get shots up. And then guys might go see a physio, go to a recovery center, do all that extra stuff outside of practice after. So, most times the days don't finish. They start at maybe 9 o'clock and they finish at about 4:30. So it is, it's not just, get some shots up, get out. So the days are actually longer than what people might think. And, it's a full-time job. So, the day in the life of basketball is pretty similar in terms of work hours to someone that sits in an office. So they are long days and they're tough, but they're rewarding.
And I also read that Donald Sloan pulled you aside after a session. Is that correct? Just take us through exactly what happened there and kind of your foray into welcome to the professional world.
Yeah. So I was like, after a practice one time, I just went and sat down and Sloan came over to me. He's like, what are you doing? I'm like, practice is done. I'm just, gonna head home. And then that was kind of my awakening to the professional world. And he got me up, he took me to the backcourt and we worked out about 45 minutes and I was just dripping in sweat by the end of it. And that was kind of my, welcome to the professional world moment, because it just shows you have to work before and after practices to get to where you want to get to. And Sloan has been in the NBA and he's been where I want to get to. And, he's kind of showed me the ropes while he was here to what he did and what he's done to get to where he has. And, just doing the extra stuff. It can't just be the team practices and the team weights that will get you to where you want to be. It's all the little extra stuff that gives you an advantage over all the other guys chasing the same dream as you. So that was kind of what he taught me.
Yeah, well, we'll also noticed, we'll run through your stats real quick. You're currently at 11.2 points, basically 7-7. You're basically 11, 7-7 a night. One thing I noticed is your 3-point shooting. Obviously, people were asking questions about that early in the season. Some teams were kind of messing with you a little bit, daring you to shoot it, and you didn't look that comfortable in the first couple of months of the season, but I've noticed a dramatic improvement over this last month watching you, where you've now got it up to a respectable 33%. And that's, the good thing about that, people don't understand, is that you've come from a long way back. I think you were shooting in the 20s at one point early on.
Yeah.
But what I've noticed is you're comfortable now stepping into it and shooting it. You're shooting it off the dribble. You've even shot a few step backs. And I believe that's a testament to you putting in more time and realizing, hey, there's a little bit of a weakness here in my game that I need to address and needs to be better than it is. And talk us through the process you went through mentally to fix that, and then obviously the work you've put in behind closed doors.
Yeah, that was a big thing for me coming into the season. That was kind of the knock people always had on me, was my ability to shoot the three. And at the start of the year, I was reading a lot of stuff and I was kind of letting it get into my head. And I think I was 1 of 20 at one point. And, I was really worried. Every time I shoot, I'm like, oh, this has to go in, or the percentages are going to look bad. And I was worried about what people were going to say and think about me. But then, I think I had a game where I was 4. I think it was in Brisbane one night, and I shot it horribly. And I think Drew texted me, and he said, it's tough right now, but it's a mental thing. And that's the thing I really realized. It was all in my head. And then I started getting in the gym with Jamie Perlman, our assistant coach. And I said, this is something I've really got to work on. And ever since then, I've not cared about whether it makes or misses. I've just, shot every shot like it's going to go in. And that was the big thing for me. It was kind of the turning point. I think there was one game I hit a few threes and I'm like, I can shoot the ball, and I've always known I can shoot it, but it's just been a mental battle for me. And, in the last month, I've been shooting the ball, much better than I was at the start of the season. So, I think it was just a confidence thing. And once I saw a few go down through the net, it was just, kind of uphill from there.
Josh, you got to understand, especially where you're going in the next 12 months, it has to be something where you just, as long as you're technically sound in your shot and you feel comfortable and confident at it, you have to be not too high and not too low. You just got to be able to shoot it. Like, you talk about players that don't like shooting the three, that don't shoot a good percentage. They don't even want to shoot it.
Yeah,
The biggest thing for you is to step in at every shot, regardless if it goes in or not. You just have to evaluate the fact that, is the three there for you? And was that an available good shot? And taking those good shots. And don't worry about, look, your three is going to go in. It's going to get better. People, when they get to the NBA, once they put time into it, especially after the first 18 months, especially by the second, third season, they make a good jump, especially if they're doing the things that they have to do. So don't worry about your percentages. Free throw shooting is probably more important than the three initially. because you got to be able to make free throws. If you can't make threes, but you can make your free throws, you can find a way to get the job done. But if you can't shoot free throws or threes, that's an issue. But yeah, don't get too high or too low. Just keep shooting them when they're open. And I think that's a big part of development.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
Yeah, and that's been, one of the testaments to getting into the NBA is that players, coaches, people are going to test you. Sometimes you'll have coaches that will want to look at your shot and say, "Oh, we need to fix something," and that's where what Pro's saying rings true, because some people want to fix you, and it might not be broken, but they want to fix you, and because it's not textbook like out of a book, right? So, Pro said, just stay confident with your shit, keep shooting it with confidence, and as long as that ball's going in, and look, I don't think you're ever going to be a guy like JJ Redick because it's not your game. I think you're much better running an offense, distributing. But if you can hit that 1 to 2 3-point shots a night, I think it, as you would agree, it just opens up your game so much more.
Yeah, 100%. It was at the start it was tough because I couldn't knock down a three, and teams were going under on balls and they were daring me to shoot, and I couldn't get downhill and kind of make things happen. And then ever since the three started dropping, it forces guys to chase over screens and allows me to get into the paint and have the defense collapse and find shooters. So yeah, as you said, just even knocking down, a couple of nights, just it opens up the game so much more for me.
Yeah, and look, I honestly believe, this is probably something that you probably shouldn't answer, but if you're in a system that's, Conor Henry runs a lot of misdirection to get to where your set ends up, or a lot of kind of move the ball just nonchalantly to then get to our pick and roll. When I looked at Melo, people compare to Melo, obviously being in the NBL and whatnot, to Melo Ball, and if you were on a team like Illawarra last season that were awfully bad, weren't winning a lot of games, Melo's usage was insane. Everything went through him. I think your numbers would almost be, even more eye-popping than they are. I think it's a testament that you've bought into what Adelaide's trying to do. They're trying to rebuild there and win, and a new coach. But, you took it on the chin starting on the bench early on in the season, people asking questions, what's going on. I think that's a testament to what you've done from a professional standpoint is you never bitched or complained about it. You could have easily been, as Pro knows, like a lot of kids in college these days, one bad month, they want to transfer. You stuck it out, and I think you're having a phenomenal year. But I will go on record and say, if you were playing for that Illawarra team, we'd be comparing your numbers to Melo's of last season, just because your usage would be up, where I don't think you're getting as much of that usage in the way Conor Henry, coaches.
Yeah, it's obviously Melo's situation was a bit different to mine because, obviously his team didn't win a whole lot of games, and the offense was solely ran through LaMelo. But the luxury that I have is I'm playing with, Isaac and DJ, two of the best bigs in the league. I've got Brandon Poole, who's an NBA, wing, Sunday Deadshoo's, another stud. So I have these, great guys around me that it doesn't have to solely rely on me to do stuff. So I think it's a luxury for me. And I think the good thing for the 36ers is, we struggled midway through that season. We had a rough stretch, but I think we're back on track now, and we're trying to make a push for the finals. So, I'm not worried about, my stats or what I do or this and that. I'm worried about winning. And, we've won 2 in a row. We had a good win last night against the best team in the league. So, right now things are moving along, and, it doesn't really matter because we have so many guys that can step up on any given night. And you saw last night we had, Brandon had 20, I think DJ had 30 or something. So any night it can be someone different. Keanu played his best game for the season. So, we've got so many weapons and guys off the bench that can provide a spark. So it's good that we've got a deep squad that can step up on any night.
And Josh, it's a lot better. Believe me, it's a lot better doing it the way you're doing it, rather than having a team where they run everything through you. I think it's big it stunts NBA players' development early on, where they come, from college, they're like the LeBron James of their team. Every play's run to them. They take 25 shots a night. They're just on the ball constantly. The way the NBA's played, as you notice, that point guards come in the league, they play on the ball, they play off the ball. Not everything's run to you. You got to cut, you got to play off the ball, you got to play defense. Not every play's run to you where like you're just going to get these 30, 25 shots a night. And having that resilience and dealing with those situations and battling every night to try to win and playing off of other people. See, that's where American players really struggle early when they come in, especially the ones that are drafted mid to late first, second round, where they're used to having the ball in their hands all the time. We had it in Dallas where, we had like Dirk Nowitzki, Harrison Barnes, we had 2 juggernauts that dominated the ball. And then a rookie would come in and they're used to having the ball all the time, and their role will have to be standing in the corner, waiting for a shot, straight line driver, nothing's really run to them, and they really struggle with that. Now, that's not going to be you because you're going to play a lot of point, and you're going to have the ball in your hands a little bit, but playing the way you're playing now really is going to help you. And I think you sort of acknowledged it, which is great. It's going to just help you even more, going forward.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's a blessing for me to be able to play with, the guys that I do and have the teammates around me that I do. It makes my job so much easier. It takes a lot of the load off me because obviously, running the point in this league is tough because there's a lot of really, really good point guards. So, I'm just glad I have a really, really strong group around me.
So one comment I saw, which I really liked, I'm going to read this out. So you were asked about, potentially leaving Adelaide halfway through the season or whatnot. This was a while ago, and your comments read, "I think I'll stay here regardless if we come dead last or if we're first on the ladder. I think I'll be here for the whole regular season until that's over and we've played all of our games. For me, it's about sticking with it. I've never been one to not want to play regardless of if we're losing or winning." Now, that's a rare quality, I believe, in today's young fellas. I think Pro would agree, especially with the shining star you have on your name right now. You have a lot to risk, obviously, with injury and could have some bad games. You're at a point now where you're averaging almost a triple-double. And, you could potentially, and no one would fault you for it, say, I'm going to shut it down and I'm just going to prepare for the draft. So the fact that you've come out and said that, I love it because you're finishing what you started. You're a team first guy. It's clear as day talking to you that you value team principles and you want to finish, what you're involved in. So just talk to us about that mindset.
Yeah, it's just something I've always kind of had. And Dad was he engraved this in me. You don't quit. You never give up. You start where you finish. And for me, I've never even had thoughts about shutting it down or anything like that. I mean, for me, it's always been about playing it out, and I think we have a really good chance to make this finals push. And even if we hadn't won a game, we were dead last, I'd finish the season with these guys because we battled hard, we train hard every day. So for me to just quit on them doesn't look good on me, and it's not what I'm about. So we've got a lot of games left, and there's so much time left in this season for us to kind of swing things around, and I think we've got it on track the last few weeks. So I'll be here the whole season.
Yeah, Josh, you know what pre-draft training is, to be honest? An agent's going to send you to some fucking gym in LA. You're just going to get shots up with no energy. That's just how it is, right? You don't play against anybody because no one wants you to play against anybody, and it's just going to be boring, monotonous stuff. You're actually helping a team win. First of all, it's a hell of a quality to have.
Yeah.
Second of all, it just sort of keeps you fresh, and you're like a fighter that would fight everybody versus a fighter that they sort of hide from certain things. You're not that. You're playing, you're helping a team. That pre-draft training, I did it. I did it for 10 years, and it's all right, but it's just like monotonous stuff. I think it's better to do what you're doing regardless of record. It just makes you look a lot better in a lot of these GMs' minds and scouts' minds. Like, this kid really wants to compete and help a team win versus just play one-on-one against 1-on-0 against a chair for 2 months and really not get a lot done. It's believe me, you're doing a lot better doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
But you are losing potential Instagram followers, Pro. Posting those videos, going against the chair and
that's a good point. Like you are missing having an Instagram trainer with 9 tennis balls, 4 fucking chairs, with rap music going on in the background so they can get a couple of 100,000 followers doing bullshit workouts, 98% of the shit you won't do in real games.
Exactly.
Yeah, you know what happened, Josh? I said so many good things in a row, and if you listen to this podcast, I'm usually not that nice, so I have to throw a couple of F-bombs out there, so I apologize. I'm sorry it took 30 minutes to do that, but we just got to do what we got to do around here.
Exactly. No worries.
So run us through how your body's held up. Your first year pro, you had an ankle injury about 3 weeks ago, tweaked it, you were out a couple of games, but I'm going to get you to self-evaluate yourself. So this is long-winded, but what do you feel like you need to improve on body-wise, whether it's strength, agility, speed, kind of what's your positive and negative? So what's something you're really good at body-wise? What's something you really need to improve? And that same question I'd go with skill-wise and then offensively and defensively. Just self-evaluate yourself with what you need to work on and all aspects of basketball and body and what you think is really good.
Yeah, in terms of my body, I mean, before the start of this season, I was like really, really skinny. I think I was right around the 80 kilo mark, and I'm at about 90, 95, 96, 97 now. So that was a big thing for me, was putting on some size and kind of bulking up a bit, which I did in the off season, which is, unfortunate I did because who knows what could have happened. if I was still weighing 80 kilos in this league. But for me, just getting stronger was a big thing for me because I had to, obviously playing in a physical league at 18 years old was going to be tough, not having much strength on me. So that was the big thing for me in the off season. I've got to get better, kind of a low center of gravity. I think everyone comments on it. I play pretty upright. It's just how I've always played. It's been natural for me that way. You never really see me, sit down in a stance on either end of the floor. I've always played kind of upright. It's just how I've always done it. Offensively, I think the big thing for me to work on is it's my shot. It's getting better and I'm working on it every day. So by no means am I satisfied where it's at yet. I've still got a long way to go, and that's a big area of improvement I need to get better at. And on the defensive end, it's probably I think it's sitting down in a sense. I think it's something I've got to get better at, and I acknowledge it. And I watch film with the coaches about what I've got to do to kind of work on that stuff, and it's being more engaged on the ball and off the ball. So they're probably the big areas for me that I've got to lock in on and get better at over the next couple months while I'm in Adelaide.
And that'll change along the way. Your defense, my defense was horrible not horrible, but as a 17, 18-year-old, just hadn't had someone sit down and teach me defensive principles, and I'm sure you're probably very, very similar, at the junior ranks, at least in Australia. We talk a little bit about it, help side, point your pistols, but until you get into a professional environment, for me it was Rick Majerus, and then obviously getting into the NBA, that'll all come with time, and I was labelled a defensive bust and then made an all-defensive team in the NBA, so I don't think that'll be a hindrance on you. I think you're a smart guy, and your IQ alone will make you figure it out. But run us through your ideal system offensively. What tempo? Obviously you're very good coming off pick and rolls, very good seeing the floor. But if we could say, all right, I'm your head coach, what is your ideal system that you want to run as a point guard? Do you want tempo? Do you want up and down? The old Phoenix Suns style, Houston Rockets style, or do you want kind of a hybrid?
That's a good question actually, because I don't mind either pace. When it's a fast-paced game, we're getting up and down, or if it's in the half court, kind of getting through a system. But either one's fine with me because I think I love playing in transition. I think that's when I'm at my best, when I'm out on the open floor, just making plays on the fly, kicking the ball ahead, getting guys looks. But also in the half court, just coming off long balls, kind of seeing the floor, and slowing the game down for myself. So either one for me is pretty fine.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, and that's what it's going to come down to. A lot of times getting drafted, you could go to when I was drafted, I hate talking about myself, but I went to the East and it was a grinded out physical type. It was very, very long possessions. And now what we see today in the game is most teams are now trying to go up tempo, shoot a lot of threes, drawing kicks. So I think you have both skill sets, in my opinion, from the games that I've watched. I agree. I think open floor, pick and roll style and transition, drags, I think that's your game. But I think you still have that rare quality where if the game slows down, you can still get the ball where it needs to go to get a good shot within your offense.
Yeah.
Hey, Josh, what's your film study like yourself, like getting ready for opponent? So you're going to play, against X point guard or X, guard that you're going to have to guard, and who's going to guard you. Do you do any film study yourself? Do you self-evaluate your own film and sort of, or do you ask for it from coaches? Like, how's your preparation for opponents now at this level, at this stage of your career?
Yeah, no, it's actually pretty good, I think, because the night before, last night we played Perth, the night before I watched Perth's latest game, and I watched, obviously I knew Mitch Norton was going to guard me, and I kind of just watched how he guards and stuff like that, and then I tried to pick it apart and kind of just dissect it and see, where I'm going to be able to, attack them, what they do on, on-ball screens, how they react off the ball, stuff like that. So I usually watch the team and the guy that's going to guard me the night before we play them. But the coaches do a good job of kind of giving us individual player scouts, and they cut our video for us, give us notes about what guys' tendencies are, what they do, and stuff like that. So we're pretty well covered in that aspect prior to games, and I think by myself I do a pretty good job of kind of watching film and cutting it up myself and kind of just seeing who we're going to be going up against the next night.
For your own development, okay, in my opinion, you got to know this on yourself and the players you're playing against. Why did you play well and why didn't you play well? So like if you struggled in pick and roll, don't accept the answer from a coach or yourself saying, oh, I'll just play harder next time. You got to dissect the film, figure out the mistakes that you made, because mistakes are great in development. Don't, 1,000%. But you got to figure out why a player plays well and why they don't, especially when you're scouting against them. And then for yourself, just figure out your mistakes and continue to force yourself to make mistakes sometimes. And then the more reps you go through, you're going to be fine with it. But the study and film, like I said, Rajon Rondo is one of my closest friends in the league, and he always wants rookies because he thinks that's a big problem with rookies that he's played with the last 4 or 5 years. The film study and studying why they make mistakes or why they played well. So always know why you played well and why you didn't, and just keep an open notebook on the players that you're going to be playing against, especially when you get to the league next year, because that film study is going to be huge in your development, especially in strategic things like situational basketball.
Yep.
All right, Pro. We've got a hypothetical for you, and Pro thought of this, so he actually thought of something which is rare on this podcast because I'm usually carrying all the weight, no pun intended, Pro, but go for it.
Yeah, it takes me 3 hours to make minute rights, so don't worry about it. All right, so hypothetical, Josh. Say you're drafted 10, okay, by, say, the Golden State Warriors.
Yep.
Now, you got to play with Steph, who plays, mostly on the ball.
Yep.
You've got, and now you're going to have to share, time, have a lot of time off the ball and play in a situation like that, in a system like that. And especially now, they're going to have Klay Thompson back from injury. They're going to have their full roster. So you're not going to go to a team, just say hypothetical, you're not going to go to a team that just sort of like a really bad team that won 14 games that you're going to be, thrown in and they're going to run everything through you. Now you're going to go to a team that sort of has a full roster in the sense of people, veterans. Their best player dominates the ball, on the ball, plays well off the ball, but it's going to have a lot of reps on the ball handling it. How are you going to sort of navigate your way through that system where you're going to be playing off the ball a little bit? And then, obviously when he gets out of the game, then they'll probably shift you back on the ball. But how are you going to handle a situation like that?
Yeah, I haven't actually really thought about something like this, but it's a good question because it's something I've got to get used to because most teams in the league have really, really good point guards. And obviously Steph is arguably the best point guard to ever play. So, to go there would be really, really fun because I get to learn off someone like Steph and get to play alongside, Clay, Draymond, those type of guys. And it's a wealth of knowledge, obviously a bunch of high IQ guys that I can learn from. But playing off the ball, it'll be different for me because every team I've ever played on, I've, had the ball. And as you said, there's a lot of ball, kind of ball heavy guys, and Steph's one of them who doesn't need the ball, but he has the ball in his hands a lot of the time. And I don't know, it'd be an adjustment thing for me because as I said, I never really played off the ball like that. But it's obviously something I'd be willing to do and would have to do, and it'd be a learning thing for me. But I think once I get settled into something like that, it'd be pretty smooth from there.
And a couple of just the last hypothetical on it, where you look at Anthony Edwards and you see Ball as well. They both started the season coming off the bench.
Yep.
If that was a situation that you would face, and these are questions you're going to be asked when you have your meetings with teams, they're going to ask you questions like this. So it doesn't matter if you know or not know right now, but we're just curious about your answers. But it's some things you got to think about, like how would you adjust? They played 15, 20 games off the bench, and then there was full-time starters, and obviously the usage and everything went through the roof. But how do you handle that situation coming in the league at first? Not, if you're not starting, hypothetical, depending on what team you're going to play on.
Yeah, no, nothing changes for me. Whether I play 40 minutes, play 20 minutes, I'm going to, play the same that I usually would. Regardless if I'm starting coming off the bench, nothing will change for me. It's, I know how it works. I know how the league works. It's really tough for rookies to come in and start straight away and have a huge impact like, some of these, once in a generational rookies you see that have that impact. So, I'm pretty aware of how that all works. And, whether it's coming off the bench, playing 3 minutes a game or coming off the bench, playing 30 minutes or whatever it is, I'm going to play the way I play and do what I have to do to help the team win as many games as we can.
Right. Tell us something that we don't know about you. Something that, look, your hobbies, your interests outside of basketball. I know you like playing video games, but I mean, tell us something quirky, something away from basketball that listeners would really enjoy to hear.
Gee.
Put you on the spot.
I don't know what to say.
Nice, folks.
Yeah, PlayStation's probably the big thing for me. I mean, outside of basketball and training, there's not a lot really to do in Adelaide, but I live on the beach, so I'm there pretty often. PlayStation. I FaceTime a lot of my friends back home. I got friends in college, my parents. Well, my parents come up here a fair bit, actually, so I spend a bit of time with them. I'm a big shoe collector, so I spend a lot of time online buying shoes and stuff like that. So they're probably my hobbies outside of basketball.
It's the right answer. Basketball is life, bro. Basketball is life.
Exactly.
But Bogues, I have a feeling that PS5 ain't going to be making the fucking trip when he goes to LA and New York. That's just my opinion. But, I don't think he's going to be playing fucking, too many games in those cities.
There is a lot of good shoes you can purchase out there. You better get a deep checkbook, young fella, because they can get pretty expensive. You look at like the PJ Tucker collection. Whew.
Yeah, I'm not saying it.
I mean, finally, I'll just ask you this. What have you looked far ahead yet with your plan post-season with what you're going to do? Are you going to stay based in Australia? I mean, COVID's kind of thrown a spanner in the works where you can't really travel too much yet, but would your plan, obviously Daniel Moldovan, shout out to him for organising this first and foremost, from now the executive VP of Octagon Basketball, who's your agent, was the plan probably to go over there and work out post-season? I mean, how do you see all that going?
Yeah, I think more than likely, depending on what happens with the COVID stuff and, if travel restrictions are eased or what the deal is, I'll probably head to LA and work out for a little bit, all that stuff. But, nothing's really been finalized yet just because of the COVID and travel restrictions right now. So when we get closer to the end of the season, we'll probably sit down and map out a plan for the off season and figure that all out. But yeah, at this point, I'll probably head to LA if restrictions allow me to.
Great. I mean, look, everyone I talk to, raves about this kid. They rave about, his basketball IQ, how good of a person he is. Joe Ingles is a good friend of mine. I reached out to him. Josh is texting him constantly about trying to figure out what he can do better, what he did well, asking questions. And a guy like Joe's a perfect pro. I mean, he's a consummate professional, does everything right. So I think the sky's the limit for you. I mean, I hope you go number one. I know you've moved up from a late first round now to you're starting to etch that lottery pick numbers, which is sensational. And look, on behalf of Pro and I, especially myself, going through all that, I know the journey is going to be up and down. You're going to be nervous, but you've done all the work. We're looking forward to watching your career, and we really appreciate you joining us on Rogue Bogues.
Appreciate it. No, thanks, Heath, guys. Appreciate everything.
Appreciate you, man. Hey, thank you.
All right, thanks to Josh Giddey again for joining us on the Rogue Bogues podcast. Hope you got a kick out of listening to his journey and what the horizon looks like for him, how he's treating this season with the Adelaide 36ers. I think there were some absolute gems in there. Once again, at Rogue Bogues on all your social media platforms, all your podcast platforms that host, you will find us there, and at Hoop Consultants. And Mike, I hope you didn't break his balls too much.
Hey, Bogues, can I get my $1.99 back too? Because I had to fucking spend it on Facebook to watch the thing live. It was me and like Harvey Weinstein watching the fucking game last night at 3:30 in the morning. Can I get it? Can I get the expense? Can I get the corporate credit card?
From his cell?
Yeah, from the cell. He was doing it on his contraband phone that he had to smuggle it in with a sock. So it was me and Weinstein. Can I get my $1.99 back plus tax? Fucking Zuckerberg got me.
Surely you could have found some illegal stream somewhere, man. We're gonna, there'll be a few pop-ups along the way that you might not appreciate, but surely there was a stream somewhere.
Bogues, I'm 400 pounds. I haven't seen my feet since the 90s. You think I'm fucking getting out of my chair to fucking do all that work?
Well, you can do it from your chair. A stream is, a website. You just got to Google illegal stream. No, we don't condone that. People should pay for their viewing habits. You should always pay the premium. Don't be like 16-year-old Bogues and try to find everything illegally. That would be frowned upon.
But that is a cool way to watch NBL games. I don't know if all the NBL games are like that. If you put people in the United States trying to watch Giddey play, I'm sure they're going to do that more. They're going to put his games on. I didn't think I was going to get charged. I just thought it was going to be like a $1.99. I mean, no fee at all, just a Facebook Live. But like 20 minutes before the game started, of course, $1.99 you had to pay for it. But I'll tell you what, it was a great stream. You got the telecast. It wasn't just a video and no audio. It was pretty good. I thought it was $1.99 well spent.
Oh, what are you getting for $2 these days, mate? Nothing.
Cheeseburger, motherfucker.
A dollar menu still around, You got to stay away from that one. But
ironically enough, I haven't eaten meat in about 5 years. I know everyone's going to say fuck off and I'm lying, but that is true.
Well, yeah, besides hot dogs and burgers.
Yeah,
They're vegan.
Why not?
You can get the plant-based shit these days.
Sure.
Anyway, we can go on forever. Thanks again, Mike. Thanks again to Josh Giddey for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.